Ladies and gentlemen, a dark end to the 2025 Buffalo Bills season results in a dark Monday on January 19th. Heartbreaking end to yet another season and a heartbreaking end to a near decade-long tenure for Buffalo Bills head coach Sean McDermott. About 20 minutes ago on Monday, January 19th, about 9:30 a.m., head coach Sean McDermott has been fired by the Buffalo Bills, relieved of his duties as the head coach of the team. The man who has been the coach for the entire duration of the Josh Allen era, one of the best eras of Buffalo Bills football and franchise history, will no longer be manning the ship moving forward. Not only is Sean McDermott fired, it has been reported that general manager Brandon Beane will be retained. This is a wild Monday morning that I was not anticipating. Maybe I should have been, but the way this is going down, I just don't quite understand. Good to have you in, folks. Hundreds of you piling in. I'm sure hundreds more will as the news is hitting you as it did me. I literally still got like crust in my eye. This hit me like a bat out of hell. And we will go through all the information obtained as it comes to fruition in real time. The black and white situation here is the Buffalo Bills are now seeking a new head coach for the first time in nearly a decade. I had said after the game, after the loss to the Denver Broncos on Saturday, if you felt that it was time for a regime change, then I understood where you were coming from. Would this have been the decision I made after that game? I don't think so. But I completely understood where people were coming from who said, you know what? We've been doing this for 9 years, and I got to see something different. I've had about enough. I've had about enough of the same old song and dance each and every year. The same type of exit each and every year. You just slightly switch up the way it breaks your heart. I get it. My issue is that at times I don't think McDermott was the one deserving of the blame. At times he was. I think it's been a bit now since I felt that he was worthy of the bulk share of the blame. In this past game in particular, I thought he coached a pretty damn good game. Now that I look back on it, the emotions of the locker room were far different than they've ever been following the loss in the postseason, following a season coming to an end for these Buffalo Bills. You can't help but wonder now if this seemed to be inevitable to those that were in the locker room. Look, whether you love the guy, whether you hate the guy, or whether you were impartial about the situation, the guy was the head coach for this team for nearly a decade, and every player on that team really knew nothing else other than following the leadership of Sean McDermott. And it did, looking back on it, now seem like these guys had maybe a gut feeling that would no longer be the case. And that's exactly what happened. You don't see a handful of pro athletes after a divisional round loss kind of well up the way that they did. And I think there was a lot of factors involved. The way that they lost, of course, knowing this was one of their best chances that they've had, that they will have. But you can't help but think that now maybe there was some realization by the top guys, Dawkins, Allen. Maybe they knew coach's job was on the line here. I can't help but wonder if Brandon Cooks' catch is ruled a catch and they move on to the AFC Championship, is Coach Sean McDermott fired today? The answer is no. And is he fired a week from today if they lose to the New England Patriots? One would have to wonder. One would have to question whether or not this reality would be reality had just one moment in time in that game gone differently. And we can boil it down to one of the most controversial plays of the season. At the time, I didn't think it was as controversial as it was. If you've been following me on social media, you know I've been going to war over this play over the last 24 hours. Nothing to do with the fact that I find that to be the sole reason the Buffalo Bills lost. Everything to do with the fact that I am absolutely sick and tired of the inconsistencies in officiating, and I am sick and tired of not knowing what a catch is when this multi-billion-dollar league is predicated on catching the football. Now, you mean to tell me now if that play is ruled the way Devontae Adams' catch was ruled on Sunday evening, that Sean McDermott is still the head coach of the Buffalo Bills today? Is that what we boil this down to? I would love to know. What was the threshold? Or was it Super Bowl or bust? Maybe we'll find this out. These are the questions that really intrigue me. What would it have taken to have retained Sean McDermott? What did he have to do? And now that we look back on it, you know, when he goes to the podium, Sean McDermott's a very collected guy. Coach for 9 years, you rarely saw the guy explode. You knew when he was mad, and you knew when he was fired up, passionate. The guy was very, very good at keeping his head. And I wouldn't even say he lost his cool after that game, after that loss to Denver, but he let you know where he was mentally about that Cooks play. And, you know, I had heard some people saying and talking, even in the chat post-game, saying that might have been McDermott fighting for his job. And, you know, now that you're looking at everything through a different glass here, a different lens, maybe it was. I told you guys that regardless of whether or not they won or lost, I said if they fire McDermott, I'm gonna be sad about it, and that is 100% true. I am absolutely bummed about this, and I. Two things can be true. Coach Sean McDermott didn't get it done, but the guy was the leader of one of, if not the best era of Buffalo Bills football in franchise history, bar none. Bar none. The greatest era that I ever got to witness. And it's not even close. I had a lot of respect for that guy. He had a lot of success for that franchise. I think he did an unbelievable job flipping what was one of the more mediocre franchises and cultures in professional sports into one that was quite literally the standard. I think Sean McDermott did an unbelievable job taking a franchise that was a laughingstock my entire life and making them the team that felt like everybody was looking up at least until the postseason. I mean, seriously, this team became what would be the standard in professional sports for the last half decade. He took a team my entire life where you were almost, my entire life being a Bills fan, that equated to being rooting for mediocrity and failure every year. And I think when Sean McDermott came around, the tide really turned. I don't know what to make of this, to be honest. My gut reaction is I don't understand the move in totality here. If you are going to fire McDermott, why are we not cleaning house? What did Brandon Beane do to retain his job that Sean McDermott did not? We have gone over this religiously. If we're looking at resume, if we're looking at actions taken, worthy enough to be fired or relieved of your duties, the list that Brandon Beane has compiled this past season far exceeds that of Sean McDermott. If you're going to clean house, then do a deep clean. Don't just get the broom out and swipe stuff under the rug. This, to me, that's what that feels like. This is a half measure. You're going to go all in to try to flip up the script. You're going to go all in to try to change what the Buffalo Bills are and the outcomes of these seasons. Then do it. What is the point of this? The roster that was compiled, that was put out there on Saturday afternoon, that may have been the worst fielded roster of the remaining playoff teams, was compiled by the guy that has his job safe on Monday morning. I understand. I like Brandon Beane. I've been over this. I like Brandon Beane. It's not all failure. I mean, clearly, they've had a ton of success, both of these guys. The Brandon Beane has had a ton of success, and I think he's one hell of a GM. I think he manages the cap extremely well despite the issues that the Bills currently have. We have looked throughout the last 9 years or so, and Brandon Beane has done a really good job making sure that he retains the players they feel necessary to retain. Great at getting a deal done. I know we look back and James Cook held out and whatever else. Look at all of the guys the Bills have retained under market value. I mean, he's really good at that type of stuff. But when we're looking at recent drafts here, the success has not been what you would hope it would be. And you're seeing other teams really start to take a noticeable lead here in terms of personnel based on what they've done in recent drafts here. Regardless, I can list you off the successes McDermott's had. I can list you off the failures McDermott's had. I can do the same thing here for Brandon Beane. My whole confusion stems from the fact that this past year was the worst year Brandon Beane has had as the general manager of the football team. There were numerous instances that left you scratching your head saying, what is going on with this guy? Why does that result in retaining your job while the head coach ends up being the one that has to take the brunt of the blame and ultimately lose his job? I had felt that there was potential for a change. I said I would be shocked. I can't lie, I am. But I did not think this particular type of change was going to be the reality. I thought we would see, if there was one guy to go, in my heart of hearts, gun to my head, bet the house if that was what I was forced to do, it would be Beane that was moved on from, Sean McDermott retained. I, in no world, thought that this combination was going to be the result, and that's exactly what wound up happening. And now I would imagine Brandon Beane is now in charge of finding the next guy, the successor to Sean McDermott. What's the leash look like for Brandon Beane now? How long is this leash? There's a ton of questions. I mean, I got a ton of questions. How long is the leash now for Brandon Beane? What happens if we go into yet another draft where it's a whole lot of, maybe we'll wait. We're talking very little impact right off the bat. We're talking no star receiver added during the draft or free agency, whatever. We're talking no significant changes made to what was one of the weaker rosters remaining in the playoffs. What happens? What is the bar here? And how long of a leash does Brandon Beane have? How long in terms of time does he have to prove that he's worthy of continuing to maintain the gig? What was the conversation had? And why does Beane trump McDermott here on the totem pole? McDermott and Beane came in a package. Sean McDermott handpicked Brandon Beane. Sorry if I'm confused here, which I am. If you're going to clean house, clean the windows, get between the crevices of the bathtub. I mean, clean the house. You're going to throw down a couple sprays of Clorox and wipe down the counter. That's what this feels like to me. And you're seemingly cleaning what I find to be an area of the house that right now doesn't necessarily need to be cleaned. It's like you're having your family over to stay the weekend and you end up cleaning the basement office that nobody's been in 5 years. Yeah, it could use a clean. Yeah, you know what? If somebody said, hey, we need to clean this office, man, we really got to take care of this. It's been a long time. And listen, I want to be able to reuse this. Fine. But right now, if we're going to clean the house, clean the house. I'd love to know the players' reactions to this. I'm sure those will come out. I'll tell you one thing. The Buffalo Bills head coaching job just became the most highly sought after coaching job in football in recent memory. I said this about the Baltimore Ravens, but I think more people are signing up to coach Josh Allen than Lamar. Maybe not by a wide margin, but I think that's probably the case. We have seen these GM polls. Who would you start your franchise with today if you had to pick? It's Josh Allen. It's Josh Allen. It's Josh Allen. Regardless, I think that's what it comes down to. You now come down to two. I mean, dude, this is one of the most insane NFL hiring cycles of all time. Maybe the most insane. You just saw the longest tenured head coach in the NFL gone in Mike Tomlin. The second longest tenured head coach in John Harbaugh, gone in Baltimore. And McDermott was right up there. I think he might have even been third. I mean, let me look this up. McDermott was tied with Kyle Shanahan for the fourth longest tenured head coach. Andy Reid is third, of course. You just saw three of the four longest tenured head coaches in the NFL gone within a week and a half. You now have some of the most unbelievable job openings in the history of this league. The most storied franchises. The Pittsburgh Steelers job. We have had more popes since 1970 than the Steelers have had coaches. The Ravens haven't had a coach other than John Harbaugh since I was getting off the bus, still learning how to read and write in elementary school. And now McDermott, where you get the opportunity to coach Josh Allen. You're going to have the pick of the litter here, which means that you're going to have to nail the pick. There's going to be no excuse. When you have your pick of the litter, you better choose the right one, because no one's going to feel bad if you mess this one up. You're going to be able to handpick whoever you want. It's not like you're the Jets or you're the Browns or you're the Raiders where you wind up picking up whatever's left. You are getting who you want. And if it's Mike Tomlin, I'm going to lose it. That makes no sense at all. I can't believe we're doing this right now. I cannot believe we're doing this right now. Hold on, there's this sound machine over here that turns on at this time of the day, and it really pisses me off, and I got to turn it off. I can't believe this. You know those situations in life where you're stunned, but you're not stunned? Like you weren't expecting it, but when it does happen, you are well aware of the fact that it was on the horizon. Like this is just one of those. What happens next? Like when's Joe Brady gone? When's Bobby Babbage gone? Like we already saw Aaron Cromer retire yesterday. Joe Brady just completed multiple head coaching interviews, by the way. One with the Dolphins, one with the Ravens. He's as good as gone. It has been confirmed that Brandon Beane will lead the head coaching hiring here. Just scrolling through Twitter here, trying to find as much as I can. You know, trying to weed through the smoke too. I'm getting ripped for God forbid standing up for the Bills a little bit on that Brandon Cook situation. Just getting destroyed, saying I should never talk about football again, this and that. We saw two examples on Sunday of plays that were awfully similar to that. One with the Devontae Adams situation that was nearly identical. But whatever. The amount of controversy over that play is stunning. And now look at the amount of controversy over that play is stunning. And now look at what that results in. That play now results in 10 times more controversy because you have McDermott's job essentially on the other end of it. That Brandon Cooks play will go down as one of the more talked about plays ever because you now also have a firing on the other end of it. The statistics, obviously, the compilation of Sean McDermott's career. Adam Schefter kind of puts it in a nutshell here. 9 seasons, 8 playoff appearances in those 9 seasons, a 98-50 record, 5 AFC East titles in 9 seasons. Gone. What was the conversation had? What was the reasoning specifically? And I would really love to know. I'd really love to know what the threshold was. Like, did the Pagulas essentially say, this was going to happen no matter what? This was going to happen unless you made the Super Bowl, unless you won the Super Bowl. What was the line of demarcation here? What had to happen for McDermott to keep his job? And what happened to allow Beane to keep his job? This is where I think I'm most confused. Why is Sean McDermott the scapegoat on Monday and not the whole regime here? And once again, if you thought McDermott's time in Buffalo was up, fine. If you thought the compilation of years up until this point resulted in this, and you're fine with it, and you wanted this because of the lack of results over nearly a decade, fine. But I just think that the timing of this is interesting because I don't think that game in particular nearly warranted the result that we're witnessing right now. I just don't think that loss to the Denver Broncos was a fireable loss. And this is why I'm wondering if this was already a foregone conclusion, regardless of how they lost. A loss in the postseason, was that going to cost Sean McDermott his job no matter what happened? I feel like that seems like that. I don't know. That seems like the logical conclusion to me right now. But then again, like what did Brandon Beane have? It seems to me as though there was nothing Brandon Beane would have done that would have resulted in him losing his job. You know, Chevy's saying, let T-Law and Bo Nix walk him down twice each game. Come on. I mean, the Jags had 10 points going into the fourth quarter. They averaged nearly 30 points all year long. They held them to 24. And the Bills turned the ball over 5 times against Denver and allowed 33 points. Nearly half their points came off of turnovers. You know, you saw the Bills defense, I thought, in that game allow the Bills offense to get back into it. It was 23-10. The Bills fumble the play before the second half, the play before halftime, and a couple of plays into the second half, and allowed 2 field goals. The Bills allowed 1 true touchdown drive the entire second half. The Bills had already dug themselves such a hole offensively with the turnovers that lone touchdown still resulted in them getting to 30 points. Here's the thing. I feel like everybody thinks I feel like the people who wanted McDermott gone, their immediate takeaway from this is that things are instantly going to be better. And you go back to the old cliche, the grass isn't always greener. What's going to happen when you go into this year and they aren't as good as they just were? The defense isn't as good. The team collectively isn't as good. Going to want to fire that guy instantly? I mean, the pressure's on now. You thought the pressure was on McDermott. How about the pressure now to come in and win right now? You better win right now, because Josh Allen's window, which once was a wide open, beautiful area of the house, is ever closing. And we have a slight breeze still coming in, hoping that can result in gusting us to a championship. You better come in and do it. Because the guy that got you on the doorstep for nearly a decade is gone. And now you're expected to come in and blow that door wide open. And I'm going to be monitoring what are the people who wanted McDermott gone incredulously, like just unbelievably, incredulously demanding that he be gone for the last several years. What's going to be said if there is either the same result or an inferior result? Because let me tell you, even the same result would be awfully difficult to obtain. What Sean McDermott just did in Buffalo, should a new head coach come in and do it, the bar, believe it or not, is awfully high. I know everybody thinks firing Sean McDermott equals Super Bowl for Buffalo. But what is lost in this is the fact that Sean McDermott had this team as the most winningest franchise in professional sports over the last half decade, a playoff victory in 6 consecutive years. Only 3 other franchises have done it. Do you understand how high the bar is right now for the new head coach? And do you understand the pressure that is on that new head coach coming in? And the pressure to me heavily is on Brandon Beane, because apparently this is now his decision to make. For whatever reason, Brandon Beane has earned the right to make this decision for this organization. And I'm lost a bit on that one. I mean, once again, no disrespect to Brandon Beane, but what has he done to earn the right to find Sean McDermott's successor? I mean, if you sit here right now, where is there more of an argument? Which end of which side of the lane here do you have more of an argument for? Arguing for Brandon Beane to lead the charge in hiring the next head coach for the Buffalo Bills, or arguing that he should be shown the door like McDermott was? I don't care whether you love the guy or hate the guy. Where do you have more ammunition on that side, on either side? I mean, where is the deck more stacked here? I think it's unquestionably on the side of, hey, Brandon, we really appreciate your time here in Buffalo. We had a hell of a run. I really don't see this laundry list of arguments that can be made. Really, I don't really see a argument, to be honest. I don't really see a singular argument here that allows me to justify getting rid of McDermott exclusively and not Beane. We now are at 10 head coach openings. 10 openings. Tied for the most all time heading into the 1978, 97, and 06 seasons, according to Adam Schefter. So we are now sitting in one of the more unprecedented times in the NFL. And the Buffalo Bills are right in the thick of it. Here's the other thing. I know the Bills have the pick of the litter here, but you're now competing with damn near a third of the league for a head coach. I know that you are going to essentially get whoever you want, I would imagine, but you are competing with a third of the league here, more or less, depending on what else happens here, for a head coach. You know, and I'm seeing some takes right now, like some bringing up some receipts on Beane here that just makes you wonder. It's like, I mean, we got nearly 6,000 of you in here on a Monday morning, which is insane. You guys got to let me know in the comments exactly where you're at here. I'm going to get to some super chats in a minute here. I see those piling in, and you know, I'm just trying to get some more information. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to get that. I think what we have right now is what we have. I saw somebody screenshot. Where is this? A screenshot from Bills by a Bill Part 2 on Twitter. It's a screenshot of Brandon Beane's presser from 2023, April 2023. Bills GM, we're trying to be fiscally responsible to avoid a Rams-like collapse. Yeah. Rams back in the NFC Championship yet again. Super Bowl trophy in the case to show for it. Before that collapse, they had one down year. They've been a contender ever since. You had this on top of it, too, by the way. Sorry to keep bringing this up, but you had this on top of this whole debacle yesterday with the Bears and the Bears, Rams, and that Devontae Adams BS, and how that, to me, that situation to me was so drastically similar to the Brandon Cook situation. I don't know how you don't see it. You know, everybody apparently is a catch expert now. You notice this online? All of a sudden, everybody's a catch expert ever since the Bills play, and then the Devontae Adams play. Well, if you stand on your right toe and balance the football on your right finger in the middle of January on a cold day in Chicago and spin around twice and make a noise, that's considered a catch. I mean, this is what I'm hearing from folks. You don't know ball. You don't know ball. If you watch the ball for 20 years, you would know the difference. Yeah, somebody over here doesn't know ball. I know ball. I know what a catch is, even though the league doesn't know what a catch is. So good on you for figuring it out. You should let the rest of us know. Oh, you just let me know, and it made no sense. And that's just it adds fuel to this because you now got, McDermott's gone now. If that play was ruled the way it was ruled in the Rams game, we're not even talking about this. Now, seeing some people asking in the comments, like, what was Josh Allen's role in this? Like, did he sign off on it? That, like, I highly doubt. I don't know. I highly doubt that they got Josh Allen to sign on a dotted line here. Nor do I think. I'm sorry. There are so many questions that I am left with. My main question here is essentially, was this already in play before the postseason started? And why was Brandon Beane's job completely safe? These are my two primary questions. The questions you guys are asking about Josh Allen are also interesting to me. I mean, there's nobody more important to their franchise. Actually, I'll take it a step further. If we are talking about business, there's nobody more important to their company. And I'm talking like nationwide. You can look at, go down to Goldman Sachs all the way to Wegmans. I don't care. There's nobody more important to their company than Josh Allen is to the Buffalo Bills. So it makes you wonder, was a conversation had with Josh Allen about this? Was a conversation had with Josh Allen about this? Maybe. I have a real tough time, though, in knowing Josh Allen from what we can make of his last near. I mean, he's going into his 9th year in his own right here. I have a hard time thinking he's saying he's got to go. But I mean, who will we never know? I don't know. Look, Detwin's saying this. Okay, Z, change is needed in the end. I told you guys this. I don't necessarily agree. I don't necessarily disagree with this idea that a change was needed. I am awfully perplexed, however, at this idea that the change needed was McDermott and McDermott alone. And that Brandon Beane can rip Jeremy and Joe on WGR for the most level-headed question anyone has ever asked, which was, what about the wide receiver room in a nutshell? You watched how that transpired this year. You don't make a move at the trade deadline just to then justify not making that move by saying you almost had a move made, but you didn't want to give up next year's first round as opposed to this year's first round for Jalen Waddle. You tell people this isn't fantasy football. It isn't that easy. I just mentioned to you earlier the take that he had where, you want to be fiscally responsible because of what the Rams did. F them picks, even though that resulted in a Super Bowl championship. They are on the doorstep of another one. With McVay, they've won one. They lost one to the Patriots. They're on the doorstep of yet another. I mean, has there been a better franchise in the NFL other than the Chiefs? I mean, the Rams have been one of the best franchises in the sport since Sean McVay became the coach. I'm not arguing against this idea that change needed to be made. I think that would be foolish of me to do that. I think it would be foolish of me to come on here and tell you that there absolutely needed to be zero done after yet another exit like they suffered. But then again, I just don't quite understand the move that was made, the change that was made. If you are going to make changes, then why not make changes? This, to me, it feels like a half measure. How long does Bean, like, what, now that you're putting Bean in charge of the head coaching process as well, I mean, that would lead you to believe like that his leash is quite long here. You know, that would lead you to believe he's going to be around for at least the next couple of years minimum. And now, you know, the other question is, does Sean McDermott get another gig? You have 10 openings. You have 10 openings. I mean, and I'm not saying Sean McDermott might be candidate numero uno here. But you got an opening in Cleveland. You got an opening in, the Falcons, they hired Stefanski, right? But you got an opening in Las Vegas. Like, I'm not saying these are the golden goose of jobs, but you got openings. And I think Sean McDermott's certainly going to have an opportunity here. We just got a little bit more here. Maybe we do. Elena Getzenberg does a great job for ESPN covering the Buffalo Bills. She just dropped an article seeing if there's anything additional in here that I can find that maybe shines a bit more light on this. Elena said that McDermott, from sources, did indicate he still wants to continue coaching. That seems like it would be an obvious. I mean, he's still young, and there's so many openings. As I mentioned, you got that Cleveland and Raiders job, but you do have other jobs. Like, I mean, dude, imagine he goes to the Dolphins. He could easily go to the Dolphins. They need a culture setter. The Dolphins need a culture setter, a tone setter. They're not in this position like the Bills are or the Ravens are, where they're looking to hire a coach to go and win right now. I'm not saying the Dolphins are in as bad of a situation as the Giants were, the Jets have been in, but to me, they're in more of a situation where they need stabilization more than anything. I think it goes without question. If you're looking for that, McDermott brings you that. Same can be said about the Arizona Cardinals, by the way. You know, look at the NFC West. 3 of the final 4 football teams remaining in the NFC were in the NFC West. The Arizona Cardinals are picking in the top 10 of the draft. They need major changes beyond just going out and winning right now. You know, this is huge. This is the biggest Buffalo Bills news since I was in high school, really, almost, whatever the hell year it was. Freshman year of college, I think. I don't know. I don't even know what day it is anymore. When are we getting a presser, too? Is that going to happen? Like, when are we getting a presser? Everybody keeps asking, did Josh sign off on this? There's no word of that at all. None of that's come out. Once again, I gave my take a little bit on it. It would stun me to see Josh Allen pounding the table to have this move made. Whether or not they said, "Are you all right with it?" and he said, "I have no idea." Whether or not, or maybe they didn't even ask him about it. If I were the GM, if I were the owner, I would like input from my players. But I think Steve Bisciotti from the Baltimore Ravens put it best. Like, I respect my players. I love my players, but I got the power. I'm making the choices. I'm never making a choice like this based off of one player. Even though Josh Allen is the guy. Like I mentioned, I don't think there's a person more important to their business than Josh Allen is to this one. But I also think that there's more than just needing to coach Josh Allen. I think you need to find the guy that you think should, Josh Allen hang it up in 2-3 years. You never know. I mean, oh my God. But I'm just saying, God forbid, you want to be able to hire somebody that has you set regardless. The guy, not just the best guy for Josh Allen. However, that is certainly, this is where you got to try, you got to walk a fine line here. I mean, you obviously need a guy that is going to get the most out of Josh Allen, but you really do need to look at a lot of things here. Now, like I said, if I would listen to the players. It wouldn't be my exclusive reference point, right? Like I wouldn't take the players' word and then immediately base my decision off of just that. But I certainly would listen. Now, maybe I won't listen in terms of getting rid of McDermott, but maybe right now I listen a bit about who they want, what they like. I would take that into consideration because I think that's fair. I think that's right to do. Not primarily. I'm not saying, hey, my main guys. I'm not saying, hey, Allen, Dawkins, Cook, Milano, whoever. Milano's contract's coming up, so maybe that's not the best situation. But you know what I'm saying here. You bring in your primary guys and you say, hey, who do you want? They give you a list. You choose off that list. However, I do think, hey, guys, what do you like in a coach? What do you like in a coach? What did you like about McDermott? What would you have improved on? What works with the guys? What doesn't work with the guys? All that stuff to me, valuable. What works? What doesn't? Let me compile that list. Let me then use that list to evaluate incoming options. I got to tell you, I would just be sitting here so less stunned if the graphic that popped up on my phone this morning said Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane let go by the Buffalo Bills. The fact that it just said Sean McDermott, that's just where I really am left scratching my head. And I'm just getting the sentiment here from others, and it feels as though that seems to be the common take. I'm not, look, I got to tell you, do I think it's the wrong decision? I'm not necessarily sure. You do something for 9 years and you're unable to get to the pinnacle. Eventually, the question will be asked, are you ever going to be able to do it? That's a fair question to ask. Plenty of people have asked it. That does not mean that you're not sad about the result. And that's where I'm at. I understand what's transpiring here. Not with the whole Bean thing being, not with Bean. I understand what's being transpired here in terms of making changes, I guess would be the blanket way to put it. I understand the need to make a change. But it doesn't mean that when change is made, you're not upset about it. There's been many amicable divorces throughout time where you love your wife, you love your husband, you've been together for nearly a decade, but it's just not working out anymore. It's just not working out anymore for whatever reason. Someone's too busy with work. Someone doesn't want to have kids in the relationship. Whatever. Doesn't matter. Everybody's got something. And you separate. But you still got love for each other. You still respect each other. You still have admiration for what you did during your time together. And that's how I see this. I mean, I don't see this as some ugly divorce where you got to get the lawyers involved and you're trying to nickel and dime each other for everything you own to spite one another. I don't see that like this at all. I mean, this to me, and granted, does McDermott probably feel slighted here? I would think so. Probably because he is being shown the door when management isn't. And that can only be taken as the blame is on McDermott and nobody else. I mean, is that not the natural takeaway here? I don't think you can watch one guy get fired, another guy be retained, and not have the natural takeaway from the general public be, it's on McDermott. But I had said, regardless of what happens, I had said if McDermott is fired, I am going to be very sad about it because I liked the human being. I loved the human being, to be 100% transparent with you. I thought he was a hell of a human being. I thought he represented Buffalo exceptionally well. And I'm going to miss the guy. And I wish him nothing but the best success moving forward. We do have a bit of breaking news. 4 minutes ago, the Buffalo Bills have officially released a statement. The statement is in regard, of course, to the firing of Sean McDermott. It's not a statement from Sean McDermott. It is a statement from the Bills organization in regards to the firing of Sean McDermott. Let me see if I can pull this up so you can visualize it as I read it. And we will read this aloud. Here it is. Statement just released by the Buffalo Bills just a couple of minutes ago. In all caps, in bold red at the top of the letterhead reads, the Buffalo Bills announced that Sean McDermott has been relieved of his duties. Quote, Sean has done an admirable job of leading our football team for the past 9 seasons, said owner Terry Pegula. But I feel we are in need of a new structure within our leadership to give this organization the best opportunity to take our team to the next level. We owe that to our players and to Bills Mafia. Sean helped change the mindset of this organization and was instrumental in the Bills becoming a perennial playoff team. I respect all the work, loyalty, and attention to detail he showed for this team and the community. I wish Sean, Jamie, and his family all the best. Moving forward, Brandon Beane will now serve as the president of football operations / general manager of the Buffalo Bills. Brandon will oversee all facets of our football operation, including the oversight of our coaching staff. I have full faith in and have witnessed Brandon's outstanding leadership style and have confidence in his abilities to lead our organization. Beane will be leading the search for a new head coach and will be working directly with Pegula and Pete Gooley, who will now serve as president of business operations during the interview and hiring process. Wow. There is no other way to read that other than Brandon Beane is being shined in a glimmery gold light and Sean McDermott is being shown the door. Let's let that resonate for a second here, folks. I mean, let's marinate in that one for a second here, because I think that's one hell of a bold statement made. What this statement essentially does beyond saying goodbye to Sean McDermott is it props Brandon Beane up on what I find to be a golden pedestal. This essentially reads to me that none of the failures of the Buffalo Bills in the last near decade lie on that of Brandon Beane. So much so to the fact that he is now being rewarded with pretty much dictating this team's future. And I'm reading the chat. I mean, yeah, is this essentially, would we consider this a promotion? I don't know. I don't get into the titles that all of these suits have. But was Brandon Beane considered president of operations prior to this? This is the first I'm hearing of this. Yeah, yes, this is a promotion. This is a promotion. Adam Schefter, Brandon Beane just got promoted. Not only was he not considered to be as much of an issue as McDermott was, not only was he not considered being let go of like McDermott was, folks, he was promoted. Adam Schefter, quote, Bills promoted Brandon Beane and added the title of president of football operations to go along with general manager. And he now will oversee all facets of the organization. I'm at a loss for words. I mean, I'm truly, I am at a loss for words. I want to make it clear. I don't hate Brandon Beane. I don't even dislike the guy. And I really do think that there's been several things throughout his tenure that have made the Buffalo Bills what they are today. But this idea of promoting him while showing McDermott the door, as I said earlier, you can before that statement was even released, I said you can only read this move one way. That the failures of the Buffalo Bills lie primarily on Sean McDermott and that Brandon Beane is absolved of those. Now that we have this statement, that take that I had is amplified to the zillionth degree. You not only pin the entire blame of the failures of this team on Coach McDermott, you then make it seem as though Beane not only was a non-issue, a complete non-issue, he was such a non-issue that we think he needs an even bigger role, an even better title, even more on his plate. Somebody needs to make this make sense to me. It's one, It's one thing that you guys, when I started the show, one of the first things I said is the most confusing aspect of this to me is that you essentially just pin this on McDermott and not Bean. That's one thing. But to go and guys, do you understand this? To take it a step further and promote the guy, I really don't. This is beyond disrespectful to Coach Sean McDermott. This is beyond disrespectful to Sean McDermott. I'm sorry. As nice as you paint him to be in your closing statement there, this is beyond disrespectful to Coach McDermott. You have essentially painted the picture here that the failures of this organization during the Bean McDermott tenure lie solely on Coach McDermott. And that he is the reason why the Bills have not won a Super Bowl. He is the reason why they have not gotten to a Super Bowl. He is the reason why they've fallen short time and time again. If you want to say that he's played a part in the role of all those things happening, fine. I have no argument against that. In fact, I think it's the reason why we all thought this happened today. You know, Brent, I'm not getting overly emotional here at all. Is this not mind-blowing to you? And sorry for having a bit of an emotional take on this. We just watched the head coach of our football team be shown the door after nearly a decade. The GM in which he hired, who had a really rough year this last year, was not only retained, he was promoted. Sorry to show a bit of emotion in what I feel to be maybe the biggest Bills story in the last decade here. I mean, this is truly I think it's one thing to have done what you did and not consider moving on from McDermott. What has transpired to warrant a promotion? And I mean, I'm looking at the chat here, and I know plenty of people wanted to move on from McDermott. I mean, every time I'm on here, I look at the chat, there's at least a handful of people calling for McDermott, right? But I'm looking at the chat right now, and I don't see many people staunchly agreeing with what's happening here. Cole's just joining. For those who are also just joining, he's saying, Bob, what do you mean Bean was promoted? Bean was promoted about 5 minutes ago via a statement from the Buffalo Bills in regard to the firing of Sean McDermott. In the same statement they released on the firing of Sean McDermott, I just retweeted it over on my Twitter if you want to look at it yourself. But in that same statement, they announced that Brandon Bean is not only the general manager of the football team, he is now the president of football operations, which means, quote, Brandon will oversee all facets of our football operation, including the oversight of our coaching staff. Bean will be leading the search for a new head coach and will be working directly with Pagula. Now, to me, this doesn't necessarily mean that Brandon Bean is going to, like, these promotions I find to be in this type of world, the business world, which is what we're working with here when we get down to general managers in the front office. These titles are meant to kind of bolster how these guys look optically. What sounds better? If I tell you that I'm a cashier or I'm a sales associate? What sounds better to you? Oh, hey, what do you do? Oh, I'm a cashier over at Wegmans. What do you do? Oh, no, I'm a sales associate over at Wegmans. Same job. What sounds better? What sounds better? I'm the GM of the Buffalo Bills. I'm the GM and president of football operations for the Buffalo Bills. To me, this move is made to just shine Brandon Bean in a golden light. you use the promotion to deflect the fact that I think many people look at this and say that he had a hand in what's gone down in Buffalo over the last 9 years. In fact, never more so than recently. So what do you do instead of saying Brandon Beane will be retained, however his situation? I mean, I'm trying to think of the way you could put this. And be a good human saying, stupid corporate politics. I don't take that as a promotion. This is what I'm trying to get at. Like, in terms of legitimate role and what you are doing day to day may not be like this drastic promotion. In terms of title, however, like I was just referring to, it is a promotion. This is meant to bolster up how the guy is perceived. What his overall presence within the team represents. This represents a far broader, larger role for Brandon Beane, a far broader depth of power. That's how I see it. This sort of makes it seem as though Brandon Beane has this massive, overarching power that only is trumped by ownership. Rob's saying, settle down, Bot. This isn't super relevant compared to the real headline. How is this not relevant? How is it? Of course it's relevant. McDermott's fired and Beane's promoted. How are the two things not relevant? It couldn't be more relevant. This is telling you that Sean McDermott is all to blame here, and don't look behind the curtain here. Beane's done nothing wrong. It's got everything to do with the McDermott situation because it just goes to show you what the mindset was behind this move. The mindset was McDermott's got to go. But Beane, I mean, we love you, kiddo. My main man Jake's in here. Jake, speaking of emotions, how about last night? At least you were able to do what the Bills weren't able to do. If you don't know, my main man Jake Ellenbogen will be live tomorrow night on the NFC West Roundtable YouTube channel. Does an unbelievable job covering the LA Rams, who last night had an insane game that literally, by the way, to a T, like quite literally, went down exactly the way the Buffalo Bills game went down in overtime. Like the exact same sequence, except Rams won, Bills lost. Ask Jake, though, by the way, about what happens when you go all in as a franchise and win one, and then how you're able to recover from that. Because as I mentioned earlier, Brandon Beane, he has been known, he's correlated to that Rams F them pick situation because he was pretty critical of it. And the Rams, that not only did they bounce back, it was like they never left. They had one down year after winning one. I think we'd all sign up for a decade of down years to win one. And look where they're at again. I mean, they're right there. And if we look at them going and playing the Seattle Seahawks next week, this is a team, I know Seattle beat them the last time they played. The Rams were destroying them until they collapsed at the end. So they're on the doorstep of a Super Bowl title as much as anybody has had a chance to be in recent memory. This is just a whirlwind. There's a whirlwind of stuff going on here. Wow. Guy, I mean, every time I go to look for something, my mind's spinning now. Diana Rossini, quote, talking to NFL executives around the league about Buffalo's next head coach options. The name that keeps coming up is a familiar one, a Buffalo native, and someone Josh Allen loves. Brian Daboll. So we go from Brian Daboll getting old. Remember, I mean, this is not that long ago. People forget now. They forget now. But I'm telling you, it's not very long ago where all of the success of Josh Allen was credited to Brian Daboll. Because people thought what Josh Allen was doing was an anomaly that Brian Daboll somehow was able to extract out of him. It wasn't until Brian Daboll left that people realized Josh Allen was just fine without Brian Daboll. You know, they said the same thing about Diggs. Josh Allen was just fine without Diggs because Josh Allen is one of the best of all time. But you go from Brian Daboll getting all that credit, right? And by the way, he deserves credit. He did a well of a job as the OC of the Bills while he was there. You then go to New York. You win a playoff game for the first time in forever out there. It wound up being the worst possible playoff victory you could have ever have had because it set the franchise back dramatically. They extend Daniel Jones, and it looks like you are, on the up and up here, and we all know how that winds up going down. So you go to New York. It looks like it's all green pastures. It winds up burning out bright. You get fired in the middle of the season. Now you're back on the block. Now McDermott's gone. Now this is how this is going to work. Could you imagine this cycle of him leaving just to come back? And how is this going to look? And this is the thing I keep stressing here. The pressure is so palpable here because the Pagulas really, and Van Bean apparently, who seems to have just as much say, you are really going to have your pick of the litter. There's no other way to put it. I don't know who currently available in the coaching hiring cycle is going to say, no, thanks. I'd rather coach the Las Vegas Raiders than Josh Allen. But hey, thank you anyway. I mean, who's doing that? Hey, I'd actually rather go and coach the Browns. But I really appreciate the offer. Like, yeah, that's not happening. Okay. So you're going to essentially anybody who is up for a gig here is going to be in play. This is where it gets scary. If you hire Brian Daboll, who got fired in the middle of the year with the Giants, and they do exactly what they've done for the last 9 years or worse, what's that going to look like? Guess what everyone's going to say? You mean to tell me you hired the New York Giants cast-off to lead the Buffalo Bills? What were these guys thinking? You fired the guy that was one of the winningest coaches in franchise history, had the highest winning percentage in franchise history. You fired the guy that had this team the most winningest franchise in professional sports the last half decade. You fired the guy that had 6 straight playoff victories. You fired the guy with 5 divisional titles just to hire the guy who got canned in New York? What were we thinking? I mean, can't you see it now? This is why this is such a massive, pivotal moment of this franchise. And I'm looking at the names that are being tossed in here. Mike McDaniel. Guys, I think Mike McDaniel is an incredible OC. Did we not? I mean, guys, we can't. Did we not just watch what happened in Miami for the last several seasons? The guy had no control of that team. 0. He was everybody's buddy. He just got fired. What are we doing, guys? Listen, if Brady takes a gig and you want to hire Mike McDaniel as the OC, where do I sign? Sign me up. Where do I sign? Done. Head coach? Head coach? You're forgetting what Mike Tomlin's done. Well, he won a Super Bowl. I got a lot of respect for Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin won a Super Bowl 16 years ago. He did more than McDermott did. Yeah, 16 years ago. What has he done recently? The resume for Mike Tomlin is half of what McDermott's done over the last 9 years. They were saying the same about John Harbaugh. McDermott beat him twice straight up in single elimination postseason football. Oh my God, I can't believe this is what we're going to be doing. This is where we are at. This is what we're doing now. This is going to be life until we see a hiring made. Davis Webb, according to... Dude, guys, we are so far removed from doing this stuff that we are so far removed from the days of well, who we taking with pick 9? Who's going to be the head coach? Like, this is like uncharted waters, even though we used to swim in these waters routinely for years. Peter Schrager said, and by the way, I'm also hearing Joe Brady's name. You want to see a fan base lose it. If you want to see a fan base spontaneously combust in real time. By the way, I just saw the name Urban Meyer, for the love of God. For the love of God. Who is this? Stybadium, I love you, brother. I'm going to pretend I didn't see it. I'm going to pretend I didn't see it. If you want to see a fan base quite literally rupture, then promote Joe Brady as the head coach. You had what, the bulk share, I would say, of this fan base wanting him gone as OC. Stadium's trolling, by the way. I needed that. Nothing. I don't mind a good laugh. We need a good laugh right now. So good job with the Urban Meyer troll. Whew, that was a good one. The majority of this fan base wanted Joe Brady gone at OC. I got to tell you, I thought Joe Brady did a good job on Saturday. Not good enough to get promoted to head coach. I'm just saying whether or not Joe Brady ends up being the next McVay is irrelevant. I'm talking about in the moment. If they were to promote Joe Brady, Bill's Twitter, you'd have to take the day off of work just to sit and read it. You'd never see anything like it. It would be, we're talking all time stuff. Too crispy. But why on earth are you acting like the sky is falling? You want championship aspirations, then change was needed. Nobody's acting like the sky is falling. I'm not acting like the sky is falling. I'm perplexed. Too crispy. I'm not acting like the sky is falling. I've said numerous times throughout this stream that I understood wholeheartedly the argument for change, the want for change, maybe the need for change. I am quite perplexed by the change. I'm not arguing necessarily that it wasn't maybe the right move at this point. I don't know how much more I could sit here and argue against making a move. I've been doing it for a while. I have been going to bat for this regime for a while, mainly because I think that their track record speaks for itself. But then again, nothing matters in this league other than lining the trophy case. The Bills have not done that. And it's not like it wasn't like McDermott wasn't given a fair crack. I mean, we're talking 9 years. It wasn't like he was given 3 years to go and win one. We were talking nearly a decade here. I understand it. Where I am confused And maybe the confusion with maybe some of you watching with me is that I think the sky's falling. I don't think the sky is falling. However, I can't help but be a bit confused that you are firing Sean McDermott. This picture is being painted as though the entirety of the blame for the Bills' shortcomings in the postseason falls in like primarily on him, all on him, while simultaneously absolving Brandon Beane from any criticism, any blame, not only not considering moving on from him, but promoting him, giving him the keys to the franchise in terms of having the right to oversee the hiring of the coach that will succeed Sean McDermott. And also what I think might be confused here with me maybe being a little erratic on this is like, yeah, guys, this is the first time in almost 10 years. Once again, like I know time flies, but 10 years is like a decade is a decade. It's the first time in nearly a decade we are sitting here having the conversation that we are having, which is who are the Buffalo Bills going to hire at head coach? And we're talking about being involved in a very interesting hiring cycle where like nearly 1/3 of the league is in the same boat as Buffalo is. You're talking about a hiring cycle where 3 of the 4 most tenured coaches in the NFL are gone within a 2-week period. You know, and you're also talking about a situation right now where I find that the shoes to fill here are far bigger than you imagine. Because it's not just filling the shoes of McDermott, the person, but you are filling shoes that are expected to not only be filled, but you're expecting to upgrade big time here. Like you are expecting an upgrade of epic proportions. People have been of the mindset. I have found that those who have been pounding the table to fire McDermott all this time are of the mindset that the second you fire this guy is the second that this team is catapulted into postseason success. They are catapulted into the Super Bowl. I'm not trying to sit here and be the glass half empty guy. I'm trying to sit here and be rational and understand, much like the conversation I had with Rico, if you tuned into the post game the other day, where we're talking about the fact that Josh Allen has now 8 years that have come and gone. You know, we were talking about what's next. And I had said that the likelihood that the best cracks the Bills have had are behind them is pretty high. You've won a playoff game in 6 consecutive seasons. Almost nobody has done that in franchise history. 3 teams. 3 teams. That's it. Outside of Buffalo. Josh Allen's prime. 2 AFC championship appearances. An appearance this year where you lose in overtime with a playoff picture that looked as well set up for Buffalo as it ever has. Now, this isn't to say the Bills aren't going to have their cracks. They always will with Josh Allen. But I said this idea that they're going to continue to accomplish what they've accomplished up until this point, it would be a really tall ask. It would be a tall ask. You're going to want them to do what really no one's ever done. They've won a playoff game in 6 straight years. That would mean in order to live up to the billing of McDermott and what he had done, you're going to have to go and do that again. That would extend that streak to 12 years. I'd love to see what the longest streak is. I guarantee it's not that long. You'd have to go. Essentially, this is what it is. I mean, point blank, this is what it is. You got to go to the Super Bowl. You are being hired. You have got to go to the Super Bowl. I mean, you got to go to the Super Bowl. You interview these guys. You sit them down. This is a point blank. This is a black and white operation here. We got 17. We're confident in what we got. Here's what you got to do. You got to go to the Super Bowl. And if you don't do this in X amount of time, you're gone. This is what this is. How long of a time will the next guy have? Will the next guy have 9 years to make a chance to take a crack at getting to the bowl? Or will he have 2 years, 3 years, 1 year, depending on how it goes? I know the Bills don't have a trophy to show for it, but do you understand that the Bills have been one of the best teams of all time, really, under McDermott? Let me just read you this off. And this isn't, once again, I'm just telling you what the shoes being left behind. This isn't an argument against change. This is just a fact. Over the last 6 years, according to Football Perspective on Twitter, and I quote tweeted this and said, the Bills are quite literally the best to never do it. And I'm not exaggerating. Over the last 6 years combined, the Bills have scored the second most points in the NFL. They've allowed, or excuse me, I'm wrong. The Bills scored the most points in the entire NFL. They have allowed the fewest points in the entire NFL. They have the best overall record in the entire NFL. And they have a point differential of 902. Plus 902. No team is over plus 600. Over the last 6 years, the Bills are the number one offense, the number one defense in terms of points allowed per game and points scored per game. They have the best record, and they have the best point differential by a Grand Canyon-sized margin. These are the shoes being left behind to fill. And here's the question. But how many Super Bowl appearances do they have? None. Which is why McDermott's gone. All I'm saying is, this is now what the expectation of the new head coach is. Good luck doing all of what I just read. Good luck doing that. All these players, or all these guys, or all these coaches, you are now being hired. Everyone's hired to win a Super Bowl. I get that, but really not really. This is quite literally one of those rare moments where you are literally being hired to do one thing. One thing. Go and win it. Now, Brent's saying a lot of us are excited. Look, I understand you're excited about change. I understand you're excited about change. I get that. I think there's a lot more in play here than just the surface level of McDermott's gone and now let's move on. I think there's a lot more to be looked at here. I mean, I really do think because of the lack of postseason success, I really do think it is being overlooked what's being what's being left behind here, what the new standard is. And for a fan base that wanted a guy who won a playoff game in 6 straight years gone, what's going to happen in year 1 or year 2 when this guy doesn't do what he's being hired to do? The only way that this new hiring is successful is if the Buffalo Bills at least reach a Super Bowl, reach one, which they have not done since the mid-90s. You are now over 30 years in which the Buffalo Bills have reached one. So you are now demanding essentially the new head coach to do something the Bills have not done in over 30 years in order for that hire to be considered a success. It's a really tall ask. That is a really, 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 really tall ask. And now you're left wondering how long will that new hire have to go and do that? What's the leash look like? Not going to be 9 years. I know Brent in here said he's excited. I'm sure some people are. I got to tell you, if I'm surveying the broad audience here, just the collective public, I don't see many people awfully ecstatic about this. If anything, I see the bulk share of people kind of scratching their head about this. I was alluding to this earlier. Peter Schrager, he mentioned that Dable, like Diana Rossini did, obvious name to watch in Buffalo. Joe Brady, he considers to be an obvious name to watch. I just don't see it. I think you made a move that's unprecedented in Buffalo as of late. You cannot promote from within. If the problem was already in the building, then you cannot promote from within the building. That to me is a massive mistake. I don't care if you love Joe Brady. Most people watched the Bills this year and felt that offense wasn't what you hoped it would be because of some of the limitations of what you thought Joe Brady was bringing to the table. I don't think in Josh Allen's prime that is dwindling, with a window that is dwindling, I don't think you want to take a chance on an upstart OC. Joe Brady just completed his second year as OC with the Bills. Now all of a sudden we're going to give him the keys to the franchise in the most pivotal point of Josh Allen's tenure, and he's going to be the guy that propels them to a Super Bowl. I mean, let's talk about what's even being considered here. They already had this guy in the building calling the offensive plays, and the Bills fall short yet again. 2 years in a row with him calling the offensive plays. All of a sudden, they're now going to get over that hump because Joe Brady's been promoted. The Bills are going to now elevate themselves to the Super Bowl because Joe Brady jumps from OC to head coach. If you surveyed the Bills fan base and said, what's one of the bigger problems with the Bills right now? I think a large portion of them would tell you that we're not in love with the offensive play calling. Whether or not you feel that way is one thing. You just fired the guy that has been the coach for 9 years. The solution to that is going to be elevating the 2-year OC to fill the shoes that was already in the building. Well, I mean, let's be real here. That's not even a lateral move. That to me is that's a backwards move. I don't see that. There's no chance. And like I said, I know there's no chance, but then again, nothing has no chance. So I'll say that there is a negligible chance. I'm talking a next to zero chance. Should that next to zero chance come to fruition, say nothing and just go on your Twitter feed. It'll tell you everything. You'll never see this fan base as disheveled as that moment would bring about. Now, Peter Schrager mentions another interesting name. It's Davis Webb, who happens to be a former backup quarterback in Buffalo. He is now the offensive coordinator, I believe, for the Denver Broncos. Teammate of Josh Allen's, as we know. He has been rumored for a couple of these head coaching jobs. The Raiders are one of them. In fact, the Raiders beat claims that NFL insiders name him as an early favorite for that opening. Davis Webb is 30 years old. This is the other question that, of course, is interesting. What direction do you go here? Do you go with the young offensive mind like many have? We've seen the success. McVay, Ben Johnson, Kyle Shanahan, Mike LaFleur. I know he's been getting some heat, but he's had success. Mike McDaniel, Miami is Miami. He had some success before it burned out. I don't want Mike McDaniel as a head coach. To me, that is not a head coach. That is a phenomenal offensive coordinator, but that is not a head coach. Now, Davis Webb, this is where you are asked the question, do you want to go with a guy that's essentially, this is the guy's my age. Do you want to go with a 30-year-old with no head coaching experience, or do you want to go with at least someone with some experience? That would be like a Dable. Or do you want to go with somebody who has all the experience, like a Mike Tomlin, which I'm out on? I like Mike Tomlin, like a lot as a guy. But when you're this far gone from your prime as a head coach, I just don't see how it's an upgrade to then hire that guy at the back half of his career to try and fulfill what I find to be a really, really, really tough job opening here. It's a phenomenal opening because you are given the right to coach Josh Allen, but it's a really, 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 really hard opening because the standard is higher than any other opening. So Davis, so here are the names that are kind of being floated right now. Joe Brady from internally. Joe Brady, Davis Webb, Brian Dable. We have a screenshot. I'm starting to see now some players weigh in. At Built in Buffalo on Twitter tweeted out a screenshot of Taron Johnson's Instagram story. It is a blank image, just a dark background, and it just says 3 words. SMH. The kids tell me that means shaking my head. One thing to keep in mind about the hiring process, because of the way the league is currently structured, you are not allowed to interview teams that make the Super Bowl until after February 8th. So Davis Webb, should the Broncos make the Super Bowl, like even if you were interested in Davis Webb, you could not interview him until like 3 weeks from now. Mike LaFleur, same situation. He's a guy whose name's been thrown out there, right? Let me know in the comments. Do you think McDermott gets another head coaching job, or is he going to get a DC job? He already said he wants to coach. So it's not like we're going to see him step away. He wants to coach. Trying to get maybe some more player reactions here. We saw Taron Johnson, not a fan. Shine a little bit of light back onto the Brandon Beane situation as well, and how I'm just awfully confused on how he not only was not considered to have the same fate as McDermott, but quite the opposite. He was promoted. Ben Solak on Twitter, quote, since drafting Josh Allen in 2018, the Bills have drafted 56 players. 2 of them, James Cook and Dawson Knox, have made Pro Bowls. There's been some hits. There's been some success. I just don't understand what Brandon Beane has done to have allowed himself to get elevated to such a degree that McDermott winds up falling on the sword while Brandon Beane is elevated even further. At the trade deadline, when the Bills did not acquire an additional wide receiver, and God knows, everyone knows they needed one. And you know that to be true because they would also acquire Brandon Cooks and Gabe Davis, Mecole Hardman. He said it was fantasy football. He said this isn't fantasy football. Sort of said let me get the direct quote here. I have the video right here. There's a faction of GMs. There's a faction of the GMs that are coming in younger that have played true fantasy football and growing up in the world of trades. I mean, essentially what we're looking at here is Brandon Beane said, these young guys who play fantasy football or they're making all these moves. This isn't how the real world works. I mean, I've watched how the real world works. I watched the LA Rams have a real decent quarterback in Jared Goff. F them picks, go get Matt Stafford, win a Super Bowl on the doorstep of another one. I watched the Niners, one of the more well-run organizations in the history of the sport. We need to get better. F them picks, we're getting Christian McCaffrey. Another Super Bowl appearance. Jimmy Garoppolo's fine. Get rid of him. We're going with Mr. Irrelevant. We literally give up 3 first-round draft picks to draft a generational bust in Trey Lance. Doesn't matter. Keep moving forward. Find answers. Super Bowls. Caroline and Zoe. Oh, wow. Blowout for Zoe. What did Zoe make of the Sean McDermott firing?
Not happy about it, and we're all watching.
You're all watching upstairs?
Yeah.
Hey, babes. Well, just 2 months into the tenure of life, Zoe Jane will be seeing a new head coach.
That's crazy.
What was your takeaway, honey?
I like him.
He's cute. He's nice. Oh, Carol. Ooh, baby.
Ooh, say hi to Peyton up there.
Say hi.
Peyton, hey.
We just. Oh,
Was that her mouth?
I don't think so.
Where was that coming from?
Um,
God, holy crap.
I think my daughter just.
Wait, look at her. She's soaking wet. How's she?
Oh my God. I think my daughter might have just. I think she might have just peed on me. Oh my God. Oh my God. What a morning. What a morning, ladies and gentlemen. Mike saying Bot was baptized. I think I quite literally was just baptized. Huh? Yeah, that's the first. If there's a lot of firsts going on in this household, that would be one of them. We got it on camera too. We got it on camera, which is great. You folks got to wait. I mean, what a morning. What a morning. What a morning. How is she? Oh my God. Chloe, my sister-in-law, if you're watching, come down. That's what I was just told to say. Wow, what a moment. What a moment. Anyway, though, you know, that was something. Ancient saying she's also streaming. Yeah, just like her dad. Gimpy saying thoughts about Gruden. I like Gruden. It just feels like he's not going to be back in the league. I don't know. You never hear his name come up. He's still working through that lawsuit, I believe. Now he seems to be having fun at Barstool, doing stuff, making videos. So I don't know that I would not. I don't see that happening. You just never hear him even be considered. You know. I like Gruden a lot. I'm wondering if you could poach another head coach from another team too, like somebody that you really like. What would that take? Are you simply just limited to what's available? Jeremy White of WGR said earlier on Twitter, quote, "The little birdie that told me this morning that McDermott was going to be gone," which he indicates, by the way, that he didn't believe at the time, also included a message that Clint Kubiak would be at the top of the list for the Buffalo Bills. Clint Kubiak. So Clint Kubiak, OC of the Seattle Seahawks. Getting the age on him. He's the son of Gary Kubiak, of course. Clint Kubiak, which is his brother. So this is a lineage of professional football coaches here. Or excuse me, Clint Kubiak is his son. So his dad is Gary Kubiak. He was with he played and he was with the Broncos for a long time. And now you got Clint Kubiak, who is the OC of the Seattle Seahawks. Clint Kubiak, 38 years old. So it's kind of that middle ground I was talking about earlier where you have Davis Webb at that real young age of 30. You got Mike Tomlin up there nearing 60. You got Clint Kubiak here kind of nearing 40. Now I mentioned earlier that if you were to pursue someone like Clint Kubiak, should the Seattle Seahawks make the Super Bowl, you'd have to wait to do that. Clint Kubiak was the OC in New Orleans before then being named the OC in Seattle. This is his lone year with Seattle. Prior to the two OC stints, he was the passing game coordinator in San Francisco. Also a passing game coordinator in Denver. So he's had a stint with the Saints and the Seahawks, 1 year each as the OC up until this point. And that's according to Jeremy White of WGR, who says that earlier today, the person who told him McDermott was going to be gone also told him that Clint Kubiak would be at the top of the list. The thing that I find to be interesting that I also think is a priority. I think that you have to prioritize a offensive head coach, which Clint Kubiak would be. You have got to prioritize a offensive head coach. It's one of the other reasons why, despite the age, all good? All right, good. God bless her. Despite the age and what I find to be a lack of success over the last decade or so, it's one of the other reasons why I'm out on Mike Tomlin. I don't think this team needs another defensive-oriented head coach. I think that this team needs an offensive-minded head coach. Because we're seeing that even with some success, the offensive coordinator position is a revolving door in Buffalo. If Joe Brady is to take a job or if they are to get rid of him, Josh Allen would now be on his fourth offensive coordinator in 9 years. And that's a result of either being successful in guys taking jobs elsewhere, the lone caveat to that, Ken Dorsey being fired. But Joe Brady has already conducted multiple head coaching interviews. From what I've seen, the two I know for sure, Baltimore and Miami. We all know, obviously, Brian Daboll, with the success they had early in Josh Allen's career, parlayed that success into a head coaching job in New York. I think if you were to go defensive-minded again, this continues this revolving door of finding OCs every couple of years. Because if you hire a defensive head coach and you then bring in an offensive coordinator that has a ton of success, within 2 years, that guy's going to be gone. And the likelihood that they do have success with Josh Allen at quarterback is extremely high. It's extremely high. I mean, Joe Brady, look at we I think we're all aligned here. We didn't think Joe Brady was this offensive savant. I don't think anybody looked at what the Bills did offensively this year and said, I mean, Joe Brady doesn't get better at offensive coordinator. And look at, he's already conducted multiple head coaching interviews. Imagine what it would look like if the Bills got even better, if they elevated back to what they were earlier in Josh Allen's career. This air raid type offense, like the OC might not even last a season. This is why I think you need an offensive-minded head coach, because you do not want to continue to have to search and find new offensive coaches every couple of years. Now, regardless if Joe Brady takes a job or not, I don't know if it's relevant, because I do feel like I feel like if you're hiring a new head coach, you're going to more than likely be hiring new coordinators as well. It seems like that's up to Brandon Beane, so who knows? But I think it would be strange to hire a head coach and not surround him with who he would like to have on his coaching staff. I don't think that works as well. When you pretty much pigeonhole them into coaching with a staff that already exists, as opposed to, at the very minimum, allowing them to weigh in on the staff itself. Taron Johnson also posted a screenshot of him with McDermott and Trey White, just a still image. I'd love to know the pulse of the locker room right now. I cannot imagine Taron Johnson is alone in essentially grieving the loss of McDermott as the head coach. You know, I wonder how Josh Allen feels today too. Because I think, you know, Josh Allen looks at this and he thinks, man, I just had 4 turnovers in a game that we lost by 3 in overtime. And had that gone a bit different, maybe we have, and maybe this is irrelevant. But as Sandra's saying, like, I don't know to the extent in which the locker room knew. But when you saw the tears flowing, when you saw the emotions, the multiple beat reporters that reported that they had not seen a more devastated locker room like that of Buffalo's on Saturday in a very long time. At the time, it felt like there was more in play, and maybe it was because they knew this was a really great crack at winning one. Maybe it's because it's the same result year in and year out and they're fed up, but it felt like more than that. And I can't help but think whether or not it was leaked that this was happening is, I don't even think that matters. I think that maybe these guys knew there was potential for it. Because that would make sense. The way that they responded. I feel bad for Allen because I'm seeing here Aaron saying Allen probably feels guilty, and knowing him, you know, he went to the podium as disheveled as I've ever seen him, and he said, "I let my teammates down." And knowing him and the pressure he puts on himself, the amount of blame he puts on himself, I bet he does. I know I think I would, whether it's warranted or not, because I really don't know if it would have mattered. Josh Allen could have had 140 passer rating and 5 touchdowns. And if they lost that game, I don't know if it really would have mattered. Like, I think maybe McDermott would have been gone regardless. Maybe we will never know. But it's hard for me to think that this wasn't already predetermined. Like, there was a threshold that had to be met. And if that was not met, then McDermott was gone. This was essentially what happened in Baltimore. It came out that if Baltimore were to have won the division, if Tyler Loop had hit that field goal, Steve Bisciotti was asked if John Harbaugh would still be the coach. And Bisciotti said for another week. And from what I had read, they had said that there would need to be something significant to occur in order for him to have retained his job. I read that as you gotta win a Super Bowl, or you gotta at least make it. I wonder if we will get some exit statement from McDermott. I wonder if we do, when that'll be. We do have like the end of the season interviews, so I'm not sure when that's scheduled for, but that would be, I would imagine, when we do hear from the players about this. What a rough weekend. get to some super chats. Let's start off at the top with Pythos. There's no doubt in my mind this was a decision made by Brandon Beane to save his own skin. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if Brandon Beane had any say in this. But it leads you to wonder, once again, you know, those who were asking earlier what the relevancy was between Brandon Beane's promotion and Sean McDermott being fired. You can't rule out the fact that maybe Brandon Beane did have a say in this. Because it seemed to never be considered that Brandon Beane was on the hot seat. If not, then promoted to president of football operations, would it stun anybody if a conversation was had with Beane about a new face at head coach? I don't think it could. It couldn't stun you. I don't know if it could. I don't know if that's a crazy thing to think. Was Brandon Beane asked what you wanted? I mean, at the end of the day, the decision is made by the Pagulas. They have the final say. So at the end of the day, regardless of what anyone said, they have the final say. They inked the firing of McDermott. This is an interesting idea, though, that maybe Beane was consulted about this move. I don't think you can rule it out. With his promotion, and now with him being named as essentially the emperor of the Bills head coaching search coming up here, I don't think it's a wild thing to consider. And I think it's just one of those things that we'll never know about, much like a lot of this stuff. The stuff that you really wish you knew is the stuff oftentimes that you never end up finding out. Joe R., get Mike Tomlin and Brian Dable, mate. I've mentioned this throughout the show. I like Mike Tomlin, a lot of respect for him. I really do. Hall of Fame head coach, in my opinion. But I don't think that this is not the move that can be made right now. It's a lateral move at best. The argument is that he's a Super Bowl champion. Yes, 16 years ago. From the time in which McDermott took over the Bills, that time for Tomlin in Pittsburgh, far inferior to Buffalo. I understand they had Josh Allen. But you saw some of the gaffes that this team suffered. And they are a perpetual first-round exit in the playoffs. The Bills are facing an opportunity here now created by themselves. They opened up this opportunity for themselves, but an opportunity nonetheless that they have not had in nearly a decade. And I don't think you go the direction of hiring someone that's towards the end of their career. I think you are going towards the direction of hiring someone that you hope to be the next Mike Tomlin. It's very clear the Bills do not want to be the team that is revolving the door at head coach year in and year out. There were people calling for McDermott's head 4 years ago, and he wound up lasting 9 years. I mean, we've been dealing with are the Bills going to fire McDermott now story this time of year for like the last 3 or 4 years. It took 3 straight postseason exits by 3 points for the Pagulas to finally say we need to move in a different direction. So I don't think that the Bills would, if you hire Mike Tomlin, just to give you an example here, if you hire Mike Tomlin today, he's 53 years old. And if you're looking for the next guy that can be the guy for a long time, I don't know if that's the direction you want to go in with other options on the table that are significantly younger. You know, it's not like he's Pete Carroll. I get that. Like, it's not like he's 70. I understand. It's not like he's ancient by any means. But I think that the question needs to be asked. Do you want to go in the direction of a guy who seems that he's had his prime behind him? And I think that that's fair to say. I think the reason why the Giants hire John Harbaugh is not because they're not hiring him to win a Super Bowl. They're hiring John Harbaugh because the New York Giants have been one of the worst franchises in sports over the last decade or so. They need stabilization. They need a culture built. They need a tone setter. They need someone to come in and change the perception of what the New York Giants are. That does not mean they come in. That does not mean John Harbaugh comes in and goes 12-5, wins the NFC East, and goes to a conference title appearance in his first 2 years. That means you come in, you have more success than recently here, which is not saying much, and the New York Giants start to feel like they are trending in the right direction. The New York Giants start to feel like a team you have respect for. It's a whole different ballgame. That's why I think hiring a seasoned veteran like John Harbaugh is the right move for the Giants. But for the Bills right now, I feel like you're trying to find someone innovative. You're trying to find someone that brings you something to the table that this team has not had. And I think what Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin bring is far more similar to what Sean McDermott was than not. Now, Brian Daboll, that's the interesting one. We've already heard that name be thrown out, and that goes without saying. I think that was a natural. I mean, you naturally navigate to Brian Daboll here. But the Bills fell short with Brian Daboll at OC as well. And the Bills, and Brian Daboll fizzled out with the Giants. I'm just saying, you got to be careful here. And I wonder if they're going to go with somebody who has experience or not. I mean, this is one of the bigger things here. What do they value? Do they value experience, or do they value someone who they are taking a gamble on thinking will become somebody that you look back on and say that was the diamond in the rough no one was talking about? And that happens. Look at what Liam Cohen just did with the Jags. No one knew who Sean McVay was until they did. Is that the direction they're going to go in? Or are they going to go in the direction with somebody that has already proven themselves, at least to some degree? Joe's coming in again. Damn, I meant Mike Tomlin as head coach, Daboll for offensive coordinator. And my problem with that, as I alluded to earlier, Joe, is that once again, if Brian Daboll comes in and the Bills rattle off 30 points per game, he's going to get another head coaching job. He's already up for head coaching jobs right now. That would be a stopgap. That would be a stopgap. If you hired Brian Daboll as the OC, it would be a stopgap for a short period of time until Josh Allen inevitably propels him into another head coaching job. He's already on the precipice of head coaching jobs again right now. I don't think he'd be able to pull it off. McAndrew. Bean staying is a joke. Should have been Bean getting fired first. I'm on record saying that I thought if one move were to be made, if there was only one move, if both were not to go and only one move was made, I thought that the move would be on Bean, not McDermott. It wound up being the polar opposite. The absolute polar opposite, where Bean is promoted, put in charge of the head coaching hiring process, McDermott is fired. And I really did think if you were going to get rid of one, you were going to get rid of both. It really feels like Sean McDermott is being pinned as the scapegoat for all the Bills' failures as of late. And I don't know how you can read it any other way. Aaron Allen saying that he just saw an interview that John Gruden had with Dave Portnoy. Like I mentioned to you earlier, you all know Gruden works for Barstool now. And Gruden said that this makes him sick. I know if you watch any of Gruden's content, he loves the Bills. And it's interesting to get coaching perspective on this because they look at this completely differently than we do from the inside. And they probably look at that and say, look at the success this guy has and he's gone. I mean, I saw a lot of this be talked about with both Harbaugh and Tomlin. The difference, however, is McDermott coached the Bills for 9 years. Harbaugh and Tomlin both coached their respective teams for nearly 20 years. I just don't think Gruden's in the mix, though. I don't think he's in the mix for anybody. I love Gruden. I do. I don't think he's in the mix. Pythos. There's no doubt in my mind this was a decision made by Brandon Beane to save his own skin. I read that already, right? Yeah, I read that. We talked about that. Sorry. Losing my spot here. Money Mitch, member for 14 months, by the way. Appreciate you as always, Mitch. Mitch is saying, I don't get Beane staying. I agreed with you in thinking that either he would go or both go, not Beane being the sole survivor. I had saw some surveys be conducted on Bill's Twitter, getting the pulse of the fan base. And I had saw one, I believe, earlier last week, or maybe, yeah, going into the wild card game, asking, what move would you make? And the vast majority of the fan base said if they had to make one move, it would be on Beane. Once again, polar opposite. As I read these super chats, by the way, I want to give a huge shout out to everybody in here. We are over 9,000 of you. Wow, this is how you know this is a big one. We are at over 9,000 of you in here across all platforms. Crazy. Appreciate you all stopping by, tuning in on what is one of the more massive days in Bills history here, and certainly one of the more massive days in recent Bills history. Jaden, Belichick-Allen combo income. Oh, my God. It took 2 hours to bring up Bill Belichick, and here we are. Once again, I can't be a hypocrite. I don't think you can go with a guy whose best is behind him. And look at the controversy that has followed Bill Belichick since his departure from New England. Look at the controversy. It's been nothing but tabloids and TMZ-style stories surrounding Bill Belichick over the last year. The Bills don't want that. He's the greatest coach of all time. He's the greatest I've ever seen, probably will ever see. But Bill Belichick is 73 years old. Would it be insane? I mean, would the story just be unbelievably insane? With the Patriots now likely going back to the Super Bowl, I can't believe I just said that. For them to hire Belichick to come in with Buffalo and try to put an end to that against his former team where he did become the greatest coach in history. Sure. But it's not the right move for Buffalo. Zach Barker, what do you think about McDermott for DC? Well, I wish it was that easy, Zach. I think if the NFL operated in an idealistic world, you'd be able to do this. You'd be able to say to McDermott, listen, we love you. We love you. What you've done for this team over the last 9 years has been extraordinary. And we'd love to keep you. We want to go in a different direction at the head spot. Would you consider being the defensive coordinator? Wouldn't that be great? Who wouldn't sign up for it? What McDermott's done with this defense, especially with the amount of injuries the defense has sustained year in and year out, I don't think he gets enough credit. I know the 30-plus points in the playoffs is alarming. I don't think that this Denver game can be used as part of that sample size when you have the amount of turnovers they had that resulted in points. I mean, think about it. To start off the second half of that game, Josh Allen gets strip sacked, and the Broncos set up shop in the red zone. They hold him to 3. Against the Jacksonville Jaguars, Ray Davis fumbles the kickoff. The Jaguars set up shop just outside of the red zone. They hold him to 0. I don't think you can look at that Denver game and say that McDermott was the catalyst in them losing that, nor was the defense, in my opinion. They allowed 1 touchdown in the second half, 10 total points, 3 of which came off that strip sack. Everyone would sign up to, I think, to have McDermott at DC. You can't do it. It doesn't work. You'll never see that happen. Because it'll be a media blitzkrieg, right? Demotion, that's all anybody will talk about. There'll be a power struggle because you go from having all the power to then having none, or at least a far significant amount of power. I'd love it, but it won't happen. To your point, though, Zach, Dable as head coach, that seems to be in the realm of possibilities. Going back over to Twitter now just to check and see if there's anything new. Oh. Arton. If enough noise, Bean still might go. Well, I'm assuming you sent this in earlier, Arton. Obviously you did. Yeah, you sent this in a little before 10 a.m. That's not happening. Bean is going nowhere but up. Bean has been promoted. John Naylor, not to be confused with Jonah. How about it? Johnny Naylor stopping by Buffalo Fanatics. John's a friend of the NFC West Roundtable. Great to have you, John. Little lore here. As you can see, the username for John. Since it's all lowercase, John sends in a ton of super chats over on the NFC West Roundtable. That's a show I host on Tuesdays. Great show, by the way. I recommend tuning in tomorrow night. It'll be epic because you now have an NFC West showdown in the NFC Championship game to go to the Super Bowl. NFC West has been the best division in the sport this year. Great stuff going on over there. And John's a huge supporter of the show. And since all the letters in his name are lowercase, I thought his name was Jonah forever. So that's a little inside joke between us. He's in on it, obviously. John saying, Jonah here. Good luck on the new head coach. The Hawks went from Pete to Mike McDonald. Hope it works well for you. And yeah, people have been referencing the Seattle Seahawks here, who just recently went over, they went through a massive change, a massive coaching change from Pete Carroll, who had tons of success in Seattle, to Mike McDonald. That then resulted in having one of the best defenses in the league. It resulted in a conference title appearance where I think that they have a very, very good chance to go to the Super Bowl. And should Seattle go to the Super Bowl, I think I would take them over whoever winds up getting out alive in the AFC. I would presume that to be the New England Patriots. Can you believe that? Jarrett Stidham's the starting quarterback for the Broncos. I just saw that Houston D, I think, is twice as good as Denver's. And I really did think that the Patriots had a hell of an outing against that D. CJ Stroud was awful in that game. He was abysmal. Played a part in it, but doesn't take away from the fact that when the Patriots did have the ball, they took advantage. And I think we're going to see New England move on to the Super Bowl. Maybe it's against your Hawks, John. I'll see you tomorrow night. Thanks for stopping by, and thanks for the super chat. Joe back in. Also, I think you and Rico got it wrong, putting it all on Josh by saying it should have not happened or shouldn't have come to the refs. That was one hell of a throw and a catch. Refs just got it wrong. Yeah, I've been talking about this a lot. It wasn't all on Josh in that loss to the Broncos, but a sizable portion of it was. A bulk share of it was. He turned it over 4 times prior to that interception. And that really hindered this team, and it resulted in them having to go to overtime. James Cook's fumble as well. He's part of the puzzle, no question. I think that was the biggest turnover of the game because I think it changed the whole complexion of the game. I don't think we got it wrong in saying that if I'm looking at the pie chart of blame on Saturday's loss, I don't think we got it wrong in saying that Josh Allen holds a bulk share there. But I will say when it comes down to that play, and I mean, I've been going to battle about this play online. I got massive beat reporters. This is the funny thing with when it comes down to what is a catch and what isn't. Everybody's on two sides of the fence here, where people are like, that's the same thing. I don't know how you can call this one way and not the other way. I got people telling me also, if you feel that way, then you shouldn't be publicly speaking about football. Like, it's amazing how divisive that play wound up being. And how incredible is it that we got similar examples the next day? I think based on the rule, that was a catch. And it was a catch for Devontae Adams, was not a catch for the Buffalo Bills. Once again, that play now will be even more infamous as it then stems into Sean McDermott being fired. Cannot believe how divisive that play has become when you also couple it with what happened in the Bears-Rams game as well. I don't usually argue on social media, and I haven't. I've been pointing out what I felt to be the obvious. I thought that those two plays were far more similar than not. Jacob, if they already fired McDermott, you can bet your arse they already know who the next head coach is going to be. I don't know. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I'm sure they got guys in mind, no question about that. They got guys in mind. We've already heard names be floated. Brian Dable, Clint Kubiak. There's certainly guys in mind. Whether or not they have a guy in mind, the guy in mind, I'm not sure. And it's not going to take long. We will know soon enough. We will know, I would imagine, within at least by the shortly after the conclusion of the Super Bowl, we will know who the next head coach of the Buffalo Bills is, and not sooner. Within the next calendar month, we will, of course, know who the Buffalo Bills' next head coach is. Richie, my main man, Richie Fresh. Sad day, but in my opinion, necessary. Being retained, I'm confused, but coach took us as far as he could. Rather do it now than in year 10, 11, etc. of 17. Pat's winning situation might have done it. Thank you, coach. You guys know I was on that. I think that the Patriots situation certainly did not do Sean McDermott any favors. Where in year 2 of Drake May as the quarterback and year 1 of Mike Vrabel as the head coach, that team's on the doorstep of a Super Bowl. And with the broken ankle of Bo Nix playing a massive factor in that game, I think everyone is going to predict, rightfully so, that the New England Patriots will be representing the AFC in the Super Bowl. I do think that if the Patriots were not what they were this year, the way McDermott is viewed would look a bit different. They were this close to the 1 seed. The Bills haven't obtained that 1 seed. I know they didn't end up getting it. But in 1 year, Mike Vrabel came in and got to the furthest point that Sean McDermott had gotten to in 9 years. I really do think that the success of the New England Patriots this year did play a factor in how Sean McDermott was perceived towards the end here and ultimately him being fired. McAndrew back in again. And just like that, we are trying to find a coach while the Patriots are going to the Super Bowl again. Just like the good old days, man. I'll tell you, like I keep saying here, life comes at you fast. You go from having a stranglehold on this division, winning 5 consecutive AFC East titles, to within 1 year of hiring Mike Vrabel, the deck being completely reshuffled to where you lose the AFC East. The Patriots are on the doorstep of a Super Bowl. The Bills fall short yet again, and the Bills are now conducting their first head coaching search in nearly a decade. It is quite amazing that the Patriots went from having one of the greatest dynasties in the history of sports to a complete rebuild, 3 different head coaches, and are likely to make the Super Bowl before the Buffalo Bills did in 8 years with Josh Allen. It ain't great. Hannah, do we think maybe this is why they were so emotional? She's referring to, obviously, the emotions displayed by the Bills, including Josh Allen, Deion Dawkins, Brandon Cooks, after the loss to the Broncos. Maybe they caught wind it was happening. Whether they knew concretely this was going to happen or not, I don't know. But I do think that it's very plausible that they had an idea that this was potentially on the horizon. The emotions displayed by the team were far different than any other loss we've seen. I think a lot of it had to do with what they had in front of them. I think they knew this was a hell of a chance that they just let slip through the cracks. I think they do know that the personnel on this team won't be the same. You got some big contracts coming up that have to be looked into. some vets on this team, some long-standing Buffalo Bills players that have been on this roster for a long time. I mean, do we think Jordan Poyer's coming back? Likely not. What's going to happen with Dawson Knox and his contract, Matt Milano and his contract? What's going to happen with Tre'Davious White at his age? I think they know a lot of these guys might not be around again. But then I also do think that with the emotions we witnessed, there had to be a little bit more there than we knew, and maybe this was it. Cal, there's a level of responsibility that falls on the head coach when you turn the ball over 5 times. It's the head coach's job to regroup the team. However, Bean is on his last straw with me. Maybe Flores. Brian Flores he's referring to. I think he has already been interviewed for a few openings. Flores is a defensive guy. I want offense here. I want offense at head coach. I like Brian Flores. I think he's done a really good job. What he's done in Minnesota is impressive. Maybe he was let go a little too early in Miami. I think that indication is made by the fact that you move off of him, you hire Mike McDaniel, and he's already gone as head coach. I do get what you're saying. A level of responsibility falls on the coach having 5 turnovers, but then again, Sean McDermott's not the one turning it over. Sean McDermott's not the one putting the ball on the ground via a fumble 3 times. Once again, I really have say what you want about McDermott, and I understand people coming to the conclusion after yet another heartbreaking exit that you want to move on. I just don't think the catalyst for that is what we saw on Saturday. Not with McDermott, not this time around. Other times in the past, sure. The collection of what's happened up until this point, sure. That game in particular, though, not the way I see it. Sword Brother, do whatever it takes to bring in Kyle Shanahan. Man, this is what I was... I pondered this question earlier in the stream. Would you be able to poach another coach from a different team? It wouldn't be easy. You'd have to trade assets. You would. You'd have to give up probably a substantial amount. This is why Kyle Shanahan's one of the best coaches in the NFL. I don't see how you'd be able to pull something like this off. The Niners aren't going to let him go. Kyle Shanahan might win Coach of the Year this year. I can't imagine what you'd have to give up to acquire him. I mean, let me see what did Denver give up exactly to get Sean Payton from the Saints? They gave up a 1st-round pick and a 2nd-round pick. I think you'd have to give up far more to get a guy like Kyle Shanahan. In my estimation, while it's nice to consider guys who currently have jobs, I don't see it happening. Incredibly likely the Buffalo Bills end up hiring somebody who is in the midst of the head coaching hiring process right now that's being conducted with nearly a third of the league. It's going to be an offensive coordinator, a defensive coordinator from another one of these teams, or a guy who was recently let go. Richie back in the building. Vrabel, 1st-year head coach with the Pats. 2nd year, Drake May. They're doing pretty good. In my opinion, that's what did this in. We still have 17. It can be done, and it sure can be done. Of course, it can be done. It's going to have to be done in order to justify this firing. If we look back and the Bills have the exact same results as Sean McDermott had in Buffalo, it's going to look like it wasn't worth it. I guess the argument could be made that, hey, we at least had to try. I get that. But the results are going to be what people value most. Rightfully so. It can be done. We just watched the Seahawks do it. Mike McDonald gets that team on the doorstep of a championship. Mike Vrabel gets that team on the doorstep of a championship. It can be done with 17. The opportunity to get it done will always be open until it isn't. But to pull off what McDermott has done over the last 9 years is going to be incredibly difficult for whoever they consider, or that whoever they decide to fill this role. Signified. Firing McDermott but not Bean as well is a terrible move by a terrible owner. I'm not against firing coach. It's clear he can't get over the hump, but Bean is 10 times more responsible for our failures the last 2 years. I know that the failures of the Sabres are weighed heavily on how people view Terry Pegula. I think he's been a phenomenal owner for the Buffalo Bills. This franchise did a complete 180 once Terry Pegula bought the team. And what I like the most about him is he stays out of the way. You see so many of these owners who meddle in things that they have no business inserting themselves into, and it causes issues. I like that he is more of a hands-off guy that has done a good job, I think, getting the guys in place to have success. There's no argument against it. I know they haven't won a Super Bowl, but the success this team has had under Terry Pegula is the most that they've had in 3 decades. But what I don't understand here, like you're mentioning, Signified, is how you do justify getting rid of McDermott and not only not considering getting rid of Bean, but then promoting Brandon Bean. Like you're saying, Bean is 10 times more responsible for the failures of the last 2 years. I think that there is a laundry list of reasons to back up wanting to have moved off of Brandon Bean today. In particular, this past year. But that wound up just not, it looked like it wasn't considered. And it looked like that didn't really factor in to the decisions that were made today. And I'd love to know what all went down. I'd love to know how this conclusion was reached. BT, Bar, Tech. What Sean did with this roster this year is a miracle. Also, the defense got significantly better towards the end of the season. And I think that this is going to be one thing that we look at when we talk about the fact that the grass isn't always greener. This will be the one thing we look at. If the defense regresses, I think you're going to start to realize that Sean McDermott did a pretty damn good job with this defense. You know, since 2020, the Bills have allowed the least amount of points in the NFL. And you're right, the defense did get better throughout the course of the season, towards the end as well. And I thought they really stepped up in that Jags game. And I don't think that I don't look at that Broncos game as a game that I find to be pinned on the defense. So now you wonder what the defense of the Bills will look like. Who will be running the defense? Who will be the defensive coordinator? Or will it be the head coach like McDermott was, like his role was? What's the move? That's the one thing you got to keep an eye on in the midst of all this. What will the defense look like now that McDermott's gone? Because the defense under Sean McDermott since he's taken over, yes, they've had their ebbs and flows, but in totality, they've been one of the better defenses in the NFL. They've also been one of the more injured units in the NFL in recent memory. Year in and year out, you got guys, the primary guys dropping like flies, and they still found ways to overcome. What's the defense going to look like now post Sean McDermott? Money Mitch back in. Thank you, McDermott, for your tenure here. I will miss him as a man who changed this culture. Going forward, though, here are my thoughts. Number 1, Dable head coach. McDaniel OC. John Gruden head coach. Dable OC. Clint Kubiak OC or head coach. Dable head coach OC. It's an ideal. I just think we're living in a fantasy world thinking we're going to get one of the top head coach candidates at OC and then another one of the top head coach candidates at head coach. That's a dream scenario that I just think would be a difficult one to pull off. But you do have Josh Allen. I do think that if given the opportunity, many people would like to be a part of that. But I also think that these coaches would rather have the head coaching gig than a demotion to OC just to coach Josh Allen. It'll all depend on when these vacancies are filled and who's remaining after that. But with watching Mike McDaniel get a bunch of interviews, Dable, hard to believe you're going to end up getting two primo candidates to fill all these roles. We're not even talking about DC, too. I mean, in all likelihood, we are now looking to fill 3 roles: head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. We got AO saying, Bot, read my DM on Twitter out loud on stream. Let me take a peek here. Whoa. AO, I'd love to read this, but this might take me an hour to read. Wow. Thank you for sending me this over. This is, wow. This has to be 10,000 characters long. I don't think I've ever seen a message this long. I didn't even know you sent me this. I do not have the time, unfortunately, to read all of this right now. This is quite literally, this has to be 10,000 plus characters. I will definitely dive into this upon the conclusion of the show and take a peek at what you had to say. I unfortunately won't be able to read it here. That is, I'm not sure exactly what's in here, but man, this is the longest, I think, message I've ever received in my life. Appreciate you sending me over. Sending it over to me. I'm looking forward to see what you have to say. I won't be able to read it here right now, though. Just because it's 12:15 already. We've been on here for 2.5 hours. It's going to take a little bit, but I'll get back to you. Thanks for stopping in. Ryan stopping by. Sean McDermott didn't provide himself with a mediocre roster. Brandon Beane did. Even if it was both, they should be both gone, not just one. This is where, once again, I come back to this idea that it is viewed now as McDermott being the scapegoat and the primary issue in Buffalo, whereas at the same time, the inadequacies of Brandon Beane's drafts and offseason moves are not, they weren't viewed in a critical light. How can you say they were when the guy ends up being promoted? I mean, let's just take a look at the recent draft history for Brandon Beane here. I liked this past draft. Don't get me wrong. I did. And I think there's some potential here. Max Harrison, if healthy, love the pick. I think you really you went a long way trying to solidify this D line. And I think that there's some serious potential there too. TJ Sanders, Deion Walker, right? Really liked what Jackson Hawes was for this team in the role that he plays. But as much as I think that this past draft was successful, the other elements of Brandon Beane's past year here were not. The gaffe at the trade deadline, the tiff with the GR fellas before the year, essentially scoffing at the idea that this Bills team needed to elevate the wide receiver position just to go throughout the year up until the exit into the divisional round, with everybody saying that the Bills, bar none, had the most inferior wide receiver room, maybe in the NFL, but certainly in the remaining cycle of coaches. Aoife, by the way. My name's pronounced Aoife. All right, Aoife, once again, hey, thank you for sending me over that DM. There's a lot to dive into there, so I'm going to dive into it after the show, and I'll get back to you. But then the draft, the draft prior to this past one, right? Keon Coleman, that hasn't looked great. Cole Bishop, love Cole Bishop. Dwayne Carter, Ray Davis, Van Pran Granger, Ulafaccio, Solomon the year before that, Kincaid, Osiris Torrance, Dorian Williams. Year before that, Kyer Elam, James Cook, Terrell Bernard, Khalil Shakir. That 2022 draft was great. I don't think Beane's been particularly awful in the draft. It just hasn't been as successful as you would hope. Just like with Sean McDermott. It wasn't an awful head coach. It just wasn't as successful as you'd hope. This is why I don't understand why Beane gets a pass. It wasn't like it was awful. It just wasn't good enough. The same argument could be made for McDermott. It wasn't awful, but it just wasn't good enough. So why is all the blame being pinned on Sean McDermott? None of the blame being allocated to Brandon Beane. Signified back in. Now, you non-Sabres fans are going to see what a terrible owner Terry Pegula is. Letting the guy who refused to trade the 26th pick for Jalen Waddle hire the head coach and then do the draft is so backwards. There's not much more I can add that I already haven't, or that I already, like, there's not much more I can add to this that I haven't already said. I really don't quite get it. And one of the main reasons as to why I thought he was going to be on the block like McDermott was, is because that Jalen Waddle situation is one portion of it. You go to the trade deadline, you make no moves at wide receiver. The guys that you had at your disposal, like Jacoby Myers, you don't acquire him. Rashid Shaheed, you don't acquire him. They go to two other teams. You then make this statement that younger GMs are treating the league like it's fantasy football and basically saying, like, you can't do this stuff. Other teams are clearly. Bob, Gruden talking with Portnoy right now. He said he's happy Bill's lost now. Said you won't find another McDermott. We talked about that. Yeah. A lot of pressure on this organization now to get this right. Because as it stands right now, it's far more likely to look bad on the Bills than not, because I just don't know whoever you hire. I have a real tough time thinking that they find themselves with more success than McDermott just did. The only way it looks like the right decision is if whoever you hire gets this team to a Super Bowl. I don't even think you have to win it. You got to get to one, though. It's the only way it looks like it was the right decision. It's the only thing. You know, some of these other coaches, you go in and there's so much more in play. Will they have a winning record? Will they get the quarterback situation figured out? Will they compete for the playoffs? Will they make the playoffs? Like, all these rudimentary things. With the Bills, none of that exists. There's one thing and one thing only that will make this look like it was the right move. And that is the new head coach gets this team to the Super Bowl. Anything short of that, and this will be viewed as a failure. Green Wingman. Shout out to Green Wingman, friend of the NFC East Roundtable. Got a lot of friends from all over the place stopping by today. Appreciate it. Green Wingman. The only person that gets a word of the next coach is quarterback, because it's not like your GM did his job to get Allen weapons. Granted, Allen didn't have a great game. All true. Now, here's the thing, though. Maybe Josh Allen has a say. I'm sure Brandon Beane values what Josh Allen thinks. I certainly think that Josh Allen will be considered in this process. I don't know how you couldn't at least consider him. How much power he has or how much say he has is another debate. At the end of the day, though, it feels as though this decision is going to lie exclusively on Brandon Beane, who will then look to get it signed off by Terry Pegula. And since Terry Pegula made Brandon Beane the president of football operations and put him exclusively in charge of seeking the next head coach, I have a feeling that whoever he brings to Pegula will take Brandon Beane's word for it. Why else would you put him in this role if you weren't going to? I don't see Pegula putting Beane in this role just to have Beane bring him a candidate for Terry Pegula to say no. You put Beane in this role because you clearly trust him enough to do this work for you. All Pegula has to do is sign off on that. And in all likelihood, whoever Beane brings to the table, Terry Pegula will sign off on. Why else would you promote him to this? Why else would you give him the role to do this job? Signified in yet again. We can't even write press memos right now. They said admiral when they meant to say admirable. I'm losing my mind. Oh, in the In the press release, let me see. Wow. Yeah, they said Admiral, Admiral, which I just Googled. Admiral is a high-ranking naval officer. The word they meant to use was admirable. So there was also a typo in the Bills press release on the firing of Sean McDermott. Not off to a great start. How does that happen? How does that happen? I get typos happen. I get it. This is the first major press release the Bills have had to do in a situation like this in a very long time. You got to get it right. Henry, I'd like Kubiak or Mike LaFleur, someone from the Shanahan tree, though I am stunned Bean has a job. Once again, like this seems to be the primary takeaway here. I don't think many people are stunned that a change was made. I continuously see people with the same exact takeaway, though. That Bean not only being retained, but promoted has a lot of people left scratching their head. Kubiak, we talked about a little bit earlier, OC for the Seattle Seahawks. Mike LaFleur is the OC for the LA Rams. I want to go an offensive approach. So you go either direction there. I'd like it more than I wouldn't. And the Shanahan tree is interesting. LaFleur, by the way, 38 years old. And I believe, I checked this earlier, Kubiak is also 38 years old. So you're getting that middle ground there from where the Tomlins and the aforementioned Belichick's are. Davis Webb was brought up earlier. He's 30. You're getting that near 40 tier there. You had the Seahawks with a tremendous amount of success offensively with a quarterback that was considered to be a cast-off. JSN became maybe one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Sam Darnold had a hell of a year. You're going to the NFC Championship. They completely turned that team around. I understand Kubiak. That Shanahan tree, by the way, is impressive because we know that usually leads to offensive success. A lot of incredible offensive minds within that tree. Mike LaFleur, offensive coordinator for the Rams, and clearly the Rams have been as successful of an offense as you'll find. They're also in the NFC Championship. The personnel, however, though, it needs to be heavily factored into this. And the Rams have a loaded offensive personnel. They have maybe the deepest tight end room in the NFL, maybe the best wide receiver duo in the NFL in Puka and Devontae Adams, the potential MVP at quarterback, and one of the best tandems at running back in Blake Corum and Kyron Williams. So you always wonder, as much as you see the success of a guy like Mike LaFleur, you always wonder if it'll be able to translate with an offense in Buffalo that we would probably all agree is not roster-wise what the LA Rams is. But you do got to take these cracks and got to take chances, just like the Jags just did with Liam Cohen, like the Rams did in the past to get McVay. Offensive-oriented head coach is where my mind is. GQ Bob, I don't get it. In one side of y'all mouth, you wanted McDermott to be fired. Now he gets fired and y'all crying. Bean played a part in this too, but they were not going to fire both at the same time. Why? Why were they not going to fire both at the same time? It happens all the time. I don't think you can concretely say with confidence that they were never going to do that. We see it happen a lot. And also, I mean, I don't know who's crying. I had said that I wouldn't fire McDermott. I said that I understood those who want to, and I understand if they do. I mean, I don't know if anybody's crying. Look, I loved McDermott, the guy, and I thought he had a tremendous amount of success, and I really appreciated what he did for Buffalo. I'm going to miss Sean McDermott. I have been steadfast in my take on this through and through. Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. The only thing that I think evolved was my willingness to come to terms with the fact that a change was likely on the horizon, and that justifying that change would be easier than ever when you are going into the 10th year without anything to show for it. But I was never pounding the table to fire him. And in particular, after that loss on Saturday, I wasn't anywhere close to making that type of statement. I thought McDermott had a real solid coaching outing in the last 2 playoff games here. And I thought the defense was up to snuff in both. So wasn't me calling for the firing, but there certainly was plenty of people who were. Once again, I understood it. I told you I was going to be bummed if they fired McDermott, and I am. And this idea that they were never going to fire both, I think many people were under the impression, should they fire anybody, it was going to be Bean. I didn't see the majority of people thinking that they were going to fire McDermott exclusively. And it's not like it's this rare thing for teams to blow it up. Usually when teams get rid of their coach, the next question is, are you going to get rid of the GM? Usually when you start to clean house, you'll really deep clean the house. Not in this case. Richie Fresh, maybe Pagula said to Bean, get it done on your next. This is what we're left wondering. What's the leash with Bean? And I got to imagine it's quite long, because that wasn't the sentiment that was derived from that press release. There wasn't this idea behind Bean having pressure on him, or at least more than he had before, where it's, Brandon Bean will be evaluated, however you would put it. Brandon Bean will be retained, however, success based on his success, we will reevaluate, whatever. I don't know what you could say. What said everything was giving him yet another title. That's what said everything. Giving him a title promotion said it all. It said that we not only find him to be a non-issue, we find him to be the man, trustworthy enough, good enough to lead the charge into the future of these Buffalo Bills. That said everything. Promoting him said everything. Had they just kept him, it would have said far less than promoting him. I saw earlier people saying, like, what does it matter? It's not relevant. Of course it's relevant. The promotion indicates to you the belief that they have in Bean. You would have gotten that idea from them just keeping him. But taking it a step further and promoting him is them doubling down on what they view Brandon Bean to be. And now you wonder what the leash is and how long he'll have. But to me, if he's in charge of hiring the head coach, I would have to imagine he is going to be kept for as long as that next head coach is kept for. So it's not like Brandon Bean's got one more year to prove it. The way I read it, he's got multiple years at the minimum. Shinra Knight. The only way this makes sense is if McDermott was more of a roadblock behind the scenes and we didn't know it, and that's a good point. I would think after nearly a decade, this would have come out, though. I feel like we would have heard more. Like, how you see the leaks? Recently, there's been leaks about Jalen Hurts and how he is more of an issue behind the scenes with this offense than people are led on to believe, where people think that he might be the deterrent to them having success with such a loaded offensive roster. We heard a ton of rumors come out on the Baltimore Ravens side of things when John Harbaugh was fired about their offensive coordinator, Monken, right? Lamar Jackson, his role in it. Maybe we'll find out more as time goes on here. But after nearly a decade, you never really heard rumblings about McDermott being this issue behind the scenes. If anything, I think he had a glowing resume in that regard. I think that's why he was so likable. And I think that's why you see a lot of people going to bat for him right now. But that's an interesting point. I mean, do we know everything? No, the Bills are very good at keeping things under lock and key. I would have a tough time believing that McDermott was this massive problem behind the scenes and that never wound up seeing light. Tristan, sorry, buddy. After my Chiefs were eliminated, I was rooting for y'all to get a ring. Hope your team finds its way one day. Your fans deserve it, as long as you aren't playing the Chiefs. Shout out to Tristan and all the Chiefs fans who joined the Mafia for the last couple of weeks. Couldn't get it done despite you not being in there, Tristan. And I'm sure in order to get it done, we will have to go through your Chiefs again. But thanks for stopping by. Thanks for the support. Appreciate you, brother. We got Santil. They promoted Bean to president of football operations along with GM. They have lost. Yeah. Yep. We have spent plenty of time talking about this promotion of Brandon Beans here. Jacob, we can't dismiss that Josh may or may not have said or had a say on the input of McDermott's situation, good or bad. It's a strong possibility. It's a possibility. I'll add it to the list again of things that maybe we'll never know about. I do feel, though, after all the emotions displayed on Saturday, I find it hard to believe that upon the conclusion of a game in which Josh Allen had 5 turnovers, that he walked into Terry Pagula's office or Brandon Bean's office and said, hey, we got to move on from McDermott. That doesn't seem to me like a move Allen makes. He goes to the podium, eyes filled with tears, saying, I let my teammates down, turns it over 5 times. I don't think that guy then transitions in the next 48 hours to walking into a boardroom somewhere and saying, we need to fire McDermott. Now, did they ask Allen about it? Potentially. I don't know. I see over on Twitter, it was a year ago, almost to the day. Or not almost to the day. It was a little over a year ago, where you watched Josh Allen and Sean McDermott make snow angels after winning their 5th consecutive AFC East title. Josh Allen has known nothing other than Sean McDermott as his head coach. They've had an incredible amount of success together. I have a tough time believing that Josh Allen was pounding the table on making this move. If he was consulted about it, I don't think we'll ever know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe you say, what do you think here? And he says, if you want to make a change, I get it. I don't know. This idea that he was helping to lead the charge to get McDermott out of the building, though, I don't see it. And I just don't know if we'll ever know. Whether I'm right, you're right, somewhere in the middle. GQ Bob with a banger. McDermott's time has ran its course, though. I look at it like when the Warriors, when they fired Mark Jackson and got Kerr, we need someone to get us over the hump. We couldn't run it back expecting a different outcome. Bean better get this right. Yeah, I know the difference, though, with those Warriors is they had one of the greatest teams in the history of the NBA. Record-wise, I believe they did have the greatest team in the history of the NBA. You had all-timers on that team. Multiple Hall of Famers, one of the best defensive players in the modern era, the best shooter of all time, Kevin Durant, an all-time great. Like, I think that I get what you're saying. It's a tough comparison, though. I mean, those Warriors were literally among the greatest to ever do it in terms of NBA teams. You know, it's not that they can't do it. My whole point is, who would love to see it more than me and all of us? I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm saying there seems to be an idea behind getting rid of McDermott, then resulting in immediate success beyond what they've already done. I think people lose sight of the success they've had because of the lack of a trophy to show for it. I really do think the success that the Bills have had under McDermott is overlooked to some degree. And that success, should it not be at the bare minimum replicated by the new head coach, this entire thing will be deemed a failure. Think about it like this. If the new head coach gets to 2 AFC championships, wins 4 consecutive AFC East titles, wins a playoff game in 5 straight years, and doesn't reach a Super Bowl, that will be a noticeable downgrade from Sean McDermott. Once again, the only way this is considered an upgrade when it's all said and done is if whoever they hire winds up coming in and taking this team to a Super Bowl during their time with the Bills. Michael Warfield, we fire the head coach who got us to the playoffs with scraps from Bean. Makes sense. The confusion behind Bean's lack of accountability here seems to be it seems to be felt across the board. I'm going to fire through these super chats. Just realized we're almost on here for 3 hours. Wow. Well, I mean, it required it. I mean, it certainly required it. This is one of those days where a 3 hour plus show, which we are embarking on currently, it's required. Q Diggs, good day for the Bills. We haven't went as far as we can with him. For whatever reason, his fault, Josh's fault, Leslie Frazier's fault. We keep coming up short with him as the leader. And I understood this mindset. Came up short. We got to move on. We gave him a very long, we gave him a well enough amount of time to do it. Not done. I get it. The way it's gone down here, though, I think is clouded a little bit of how we're looking at it. John in again. AKA Jonah, new head coach normally cleans house. Yeah, I mean, this isn't a crazy thing to me, this idea that if you were to get rid of McDermott, you would also get rid of Bean, especially when Bean and McDermott felt like a package deal this whole time. McDermott brought Bean in. Nobody would have been stunned if they were both gone. As you can see, whether you're on your Twitter feed, my comment section, anything you read, as you can see, more people are stunned than not that he wasn't on his way out the door alongside McDermott. Jacob saying, can we get DK Metcalf in the offseason? They need to do better than that. They got to do better than that. We just saw that stunt Metcalf had with the fan in the stands. We know how the Bills operate when it comes to wanting to avoid situations like that. I don't see it. They got to do better than that. They got to do better than Metcalf. Bring it in DK Metcalf. Ask the Steelers. That's not going to revolutionize your offense. The Seahawks let go of DK Metcalf. JSN immediately became one of the best receivers in the NFL, and they're in an NFC championship. The recent history on DK Metcalf isn't looking all that great. John Naylor, yet again, a.k.a. Jonah. Z-Bot getting peed on is chef's kiss. How about that? P-Bot earlier. How about that? Zoe stops by for 30 seconds, takes a leak on her dad, bounces off. You got to respect it. Jacob, LeBron James for head coach at this point. Maybe we could put LeBron James in charge of the hiring like he seemed to be in charge of the hiring process over in LA. Right? Because at one point, when the Lakers were looking for a new head coach, I believe at the time, LeBron was doing a podcast with J.J. Redick. And then next thing you know, J.J. Redick got hired. So, man, maybe they'll hire him as a president operations assistant or something. Tristan, beautiful family, Z-Bot. Thanks a lot, Tristan. Appreciate you, brother. Even when she's peeing on me, she's still the best. Carlo, how many first-round picks do the Vikings want for Kevin O'Connell and Justin Jefferson? I don't know. Blank check. Blank check, Carlo. I'm serious. Imagine. Blank check. You put the number, I'll sign my name. Juju stopping by, showing some love. Appreciate you, Juju. Juju's also saying, can you see why Sabres fans want Terry to sell? No, I always understood it. I'm not a massive hockey guy, but I always keep track of the Sabres, keep my eye on it, and I couldn't be more sympathetic to the struggles. I grew up a massive Sabres fan, but, as time went on, Just didn't have the time for all of it. But I love to see the Sabres do well. And I always understood this outcry that diehard Sabres fans had and have had up until this point about the lack of changes made and the lack of accountability and really putting their best foot forward to win. Luckily, right now, it seems like the Sabres have turned a massive corner. All you can hope is that continues and they break that playoff drought. But I totally understand what you're saying. Michael Warfield yet again. How will any head coach thrive with bargain bin Bean with his draft bust stupid call? Can't be bargain bin shopping this year. That's for sure. No more bargain bin wide receivers, because if you want this new head coach to succeed, and at the end of the day, whether or not, Bean was retained and promoted. If he wants to keep his job beyond just right now, the new head coach needs to have success. If this next head coach comes in and they take a step down, well, Brandon Bean will be gone. I would imagine. You can't be in charge of the hiring process, hire the guy, he comes in, downgrade from McDermott, and then retain Bean again. That is not happening. So in order to set that coach up for success, and in order to set up your job, in order to set the ability to best retain your job, you can't be bargain bin shopping. And it's going to be as interesting an offseason as we've seen in Buffalo in a very long time as a result. Get right. Yeah, one Vrabel in May Super Bowl run, point blank. It factored in. I thought it would from the jump. It ended up coming to fruition. The only thing that didn't happen was they didn't get the 1 seed, but it didn't matter because they're right in the position that the 1 seed is in alongside of them, the AFC Championship. What about Mike McCarthy? Oh, man, I know. He's been considered for a couple of these jobs as of late, too. I think the Steelers are interviewing him. I don't know. I do want to go young here. I want to go young. I want to go young and innovative. I don't know if I want to go down the line of these former head coaches who are in the back stages of their career with their best behind them. That's how I see it. I'd much rather go with one of these younger offensive minds than I would going after a Mike McCarthy, a Mike Tomlin. We have Suskin. Think was less about Sean and more offensive, defensive mindset. And that could be the case. This is why I do think offensive-minded head coach is where these Buffalo Bills are going to be looking to. I will view it as a disappointment if the Buffalo Bills do not hire an offensive-minded head coach. Carlo back in. Call up the 49ers about Shanahan. Everything needs to be on the table. Just looks like he's running stale with their fans. I think Kyle Shanahan could potentially win Coach of the Year. I think he's at the very bare minimum going to get votes. The Niners are not letting go of him. The Niners are maybe the most banged up team in the NFL. I know they just got their ass handed to them by Seattle, but the fact that they even made it to the divisional round is pretty impressive. Kyle Shanahan's one of the best coaches in the league. The Niners aren't letting him up. As much as I love it, as much as I'd sign up for it right now, it's not happening. Newbie driver, nothing beats the drama of Bills fandom. Best team to follow as a fan. Thanks for the coverage. Look forward to your draft coverage. Newbie, appreciate you. And the drama is never ending. And now it's as dramatic as it's ever been. This is going to be the most interesting offseason for the Buffalo Bills in the last decade. Lightning Bear, I'm done. I don't care what you call me. I'm done watching the Bills in the NFL in general. It's not healthy. Well, I hope you stick around, Lightning Bear. In terms of it being healthy or not, I don't know if I can make an argument for that because I don't know if it's done much good for my health. It weighs heavily on you, does it not? And it's this time of the year where you go from a heartbreaking playoff loss to firing your head coach. Yeah, it's got you feeling about as down as you've been. But head up, Lightning Bear. Stay the course. Alex Double X, another friend of the NFC West Roundtable. Great to see you, brother. Told Jake I was heartbroken for you the other night, but with heartbreak comes the opportunity to find new love, and his name is Nate Scheelhaas. This is the passing game coordinator for the LA Rams. My friend Jake, who was in here earlier, has been adamant on him being a top head coaching candidate. Interesting. We were joking about that because like no one had like heard of him. Then Jake had said, "This is the guy. This is the guy." I've seen him, his name be talked about recently here. So maybe the Bills take a look there. We'll see what happens. Richie Fresh, Shanahan also can't beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. And my God, yeah, how many times have I talked myself till I'm blue in the face about that same topic? I love Kyle Shanahan. I think he's one of the best. I would take him in because I do want to go the offensive route. But the same failures that McDermott had that led to him being fired are the same failures that Kyle Shanahan has had. Can you beat the Chiefs in the postseason? Kyle Shanahan, 2 losses in the Super Bowl to the Chiefs. Sean McDermott, 4 losses in the playoffs to the Chiefs. At the end of the day, both teams, the Niners and the Bills, have the same results to show for it when going up against the Chiefs in the postseason. Mic check. Josh knew, Bean knew, Terry knew. They at the house together this morning watching Sinners. I stand with the villain arc. No more good old boys. Does the villain arc start for these Bills right now? This is going to be interesting, man. Oh, man. Ifa back in. McDermott isn't the only one who called Bills Mafia a bunch of little bitches over his wide receiver decisions. Pagula is the problem. Once again, I think why Brandon Beane is being looked at in this whole thing, and people are asking, why was he not being put to the flame, is because of that situation. It just was such a bad look. It was an egregious look attacking that situation the way that he did. This is why when I was reading this statement from the Bills that they put out, and I've witnessed Brandon Beane's outstanding leadership style and have confidence in his ability to lead the organization. No, he has been a great leader, but this past year, I thought that there were some notable pitfalls, including this. And I did not think that was a good look on the organization at all, and that wound up proving itself time and time again throughout the year. I like flying. 1 second, I got it. Sorry about that. I like flying. Should Buffalo try and restructure Josh Allen and James Cook's contract to get more weapons on offense? Sorry, not familiar with that side of football. Love watching you guys. Ben, appreciate you, Ben. Well, we'll see. I mean, Brandon Beane's work's cut out for him. I don't know if you're going to be able to, can you restructure James Cook's contract immediately after him just signing it? We do know Josh Allen is always willing to restructure his contract. That could be in play. I'm going to have to dive more into the contract side of things now that we've just entered the offseason. Haven't had a chance to really dive into the whole parameters of that, but that's going to be a massive, massive influence on how decisions are made this offseason. I mean, once again, this is going to be one of the more interesting off seasons in recent memory here. And what the Bills do to acquire new talent alongside this new head coach is obviously going to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest storyline. But I would imagine that the contract restructuring will be pivotal. The Bills are already not in a great cap space, to say the least. I believe last I checked, they're $3 million over. So there's going to need to be some significant maneuvering done. Jay Ham. Beane's fate should have been sealed during this past draft after arguing on the radio that should have been his gamble for his job. It started to look worse and worse and worse as time went on. Lightning Bear, the team isn't Buffalo anymore. It's corporate. Won't be watching anymore. McD probably got fired because he spoke out. I don't think that's why he got fired. I think he spoke out because he knew that his job was on the line. He knew his job was on the line, and he spoke out because he thought he was unfairly robbed of a victory because of the way that catch was ruled. Once again, that catch is going to go down in Buffalo Bills infamy. It already was, even more so now. Suskin, my gut, Bean offered first round 26 pick to Jets for D-line. Talk about this year? I'm not sure. Get right. Any possibility Kim's health has anything to do with Terry not cleaning house? I'm searching for any reason Bean went from possibly fired to promoted. I have no idea. I think we're all searching for answers. Get right. I think we're all wondering what led to Brandon Beane being completely absolved of any wrongdoing here. What led to Brandon Beane being promoted while simultaneously Sean McDermott being fired? These are the questions I think we are all asking. Whether you wanted McDermott gone or not, I think the question that everyone is asking, that everybody is awfully curious about, and unfortunately, I'm not sure if we'll ever quite know, what was the reasoning behind how this went down? Matt saying what we've been talking about all show. Mike Vrabel got Sean McDermott fired. I definitely think it played a part. If the Patriots were the same version last year as they were this year, I don't know if this looks the same. The Bills would have won the East. They would have had a higher seed. They would have had a home playoff game. Who knows how that would have transpired? The success of Mike Vrabel in year one with a second-year quarterback 100% factored in to how to how Sean McDermott was perceived at the end and subsequently fired. Money Mitch, can I be promoted to chaplain of the Buffalo Fanatics? What you want to be? What was the word? You want to be admiral? Admiral of the Buffalo Fanatics, Money Mitch? I'll consult the rest of the comrades. Pick six fantasy. Who do you think the next best option is? Dable? I think Dable is an option. I do feel like they are going to value the familiarity of Dable. I really could see that. The familiarity of Dable, the relationship with Josh Allen, I do think that has probably the strongest case right now. Whether you love it or not, I do think that the strongest case for the next head coach could be made for Brian Dable because of the relationship with Josh Allen, the success they had while he was there, the familiarity, of course, factoring in Brandon Beane being the GM when he was there, still being the GM, the relationship he has with him. I could see it. Who do I think the next best option is? That right now, I'm not entirely sure. As I've said, an offensive head coach to me, though, unequivocally, that's the next best option. F you, Fire McDermott fan, says Fluff. You stuck us with Beane for another 3 to 5 years. McDermott apparently lost the power struggle going on between him and Beane. What was that? What did that look like? Was there a power struggle? What was going on behind the scenes? And was this decision already made a couple weeks ago, a month ago? Or was this decision made last night? What led to this? And what led to keeping Beane, firing McDermott? I think we can all draw a conclusion as to what led to firing McDermott. But what led to doing that while also keeping Beane? Teddy, Beane picked 6 defensive players in 2025 and our D regressed substantially. Glad we kept and promoted that guy. One of a Dead Sea Scroll of mistakes. I do like some of those defensive picks. And I did think that they had to drastically repair the defensive side of the ball. And I think they did a great job of trying to do that. But when you saw what the wide receiver core was, not addressing that and scoffing at it, and then doubling down at the trade deadline, it's going to wind up being one of the worst looks on Brandon Beane's career. But it clearly wasn't enough to factor into his job being on the line this time around. Red Rose. But didn't Dable have an issue with McDermott due to offensive philosophy? This spilling into how Beane drafts players in free agency wouldn't be shocking. That was rumored, but McDermott's no longer in the building, so I don't think that can even be factored. This idea that Dable was going to take the OC job, I loved it, but I kept saying to myself, I kept thinking, hard to think that comes to fruition because of what you're talking about here, that rumor that there was some ruffling of the feathers between McDermott and Dable on the way out. Now McDermott's no longer in the building. Dable would have no reason, unless there's something behind the scenes we don't know, to not want to take that job. See Jello. McD did a phenomenal job, but it's time to move on. Allen's prime is ticking. Bring in Justin Jefferson to win the fan base back now. I can't think of it's like, you get grounded and you prove to your parents that, you're improving, you're doing better. You go to the Christmas tree, you get the PS5. Right. Or like dad hasn't been going out in the backyard and playing catch with you. Only way to make it up, bring the PS5. I don't know. Insert analogy here. No better way to win back the fan base than doing what you are talking about right now. If Brandon Beane were to waltz Justin Jefferson into the room, I think this would be, whatever's happening right now would be put in the rearview mirror about as quickly as you could possibly conceive. Fluff is saying, Bean left us with this weak roster. McDermott made sure we didn't fall like KC and Baltimore. We had 4th and 5th string DBs out there. I'm dumbfounded. Bean is not fired. And listen, Fluff, I think that you are among many who feel the same. Chris, would you put stock in Sean's willingness to comment on other teams' receivers, potentially a dig at Bean's choices as part in this decision? Would you put stock in Sean's willingness? I do think that at the trade deadline, it became noticeable that McDermott was frustrated with the lack of additions. That did seem apparent. Once again, wondering what was going on behind the scenes. And what was the relationship like between him and Bean at the end? Regardless, clearly McDermott lost that battle no matter what was going on. And how could you be satisfied with the receivers if you were McDermott? Nobody was on the planet. Fluff, I wonder who this cost us roster-wise. Players will now leave because McDermott isn't here. Shaq said he wanted to stay. Does he change his mind now? It's an interesting point. You know, Shaq Thompson joins the team, from Carolina, where McDermott had come from himself. It's not like college where you can just pick up and follow your coach to the next place that he goes, but maybe it deters some people from wanting to come back that would have otherwise that either retire or whatever. I have no clue. Surely this will ruffle the feathers of some players in the building. We saw Taron Johnson's post earlier, and I look forward to seeing more comments from the team here and how they think about this. Josh saying, we've been entirely reliant on Allen continuing his legendary playoff performances to be competitive. That's a testament to the lackluster roster construction. And I think it's a good point you make, because year in and year out, what do we say? Josh Allen's got to be Superman. Josh Allen's got to be Superman. Now, I will say Bean constructed that offensive line, one of the league's best. He re-signed James Cook, rushing title leader. It's not all bad on Bean's part, but the wide receiver core was so inefficient that I think it overlooks all that other stuff, at least to many. Where people look at Cook and that line and Josh Allen and they still say, yeah, but other teams have solid units in those regards also, and they have guys to throw the ball to. And they didn't have their GM laughing off the idea that they needed guys to throw the ball to. But you're right. It does feel like oftentimes it boils down to Josh Allen doesn't have many guys. I think that that's a bit overstated, but Bean did not have a great year this past year, and somehow it didn't matter. Matthew, to round us out, last year was the year to get a new head coach. Vrabel, Cohen, Ben Johnson, Kellen Moore. Bean needed to get fired, not promoted. This is a weak coaching cycle. I don't know if it's a weak coaching cycle. We'll never know until we know. There could be those diamonds in the rough you have no idea that end up being the next Shanahan, McVay, Liam Cohen here, Ben Johnson. We'll see. We won't know until we know, but I will say it's the most competitive head coaching cycle. 10 openings, all these guys available. There's so much to monitor. I'm going to have to close up shop here in just a second. We've been on for about 3 hours or so. Crazy morning here in Buffalo. Crazy weekend that concludes here on Monday morning. Before I sign off, want to give a shout out to my friends over at Sleeper. Link is in the description below. Click that and sign up for a Sleeper account. And once you do, you will immediately get a free $20 entry to build your Sleeper slips. You can use that on the AFC and NFC championship games, the Super Bowl, NBA, NHL, you name it. It's all on Sleeper. Once you use your free $20 entry, use the promo code on your screen, BF25, and that will get you a 100% match up to $100. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper terms of use for details. Currently available in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper via the link in the description below. This is just the beginning of what will be a very long, interesting, and crazy offseason for the Buffalo Bills. Glad we were able to join today on one of the more notable, one of the more wild days in recent Buffalo Bills history, upon the conclusion of the divisional round in which the Buffalo Bills lose yet again in heartbreaking fashion. Sean McDermott fired as the head coach of the Buffalo Bills after 9 seasons. We dove into it all and then some, including the retaining of Brandon Beane and the promotion to Brandon Beane. Just a lot here. We just touched on the surface of it, and we'll have a lot more coming your way in the coming days here on the Buffalo Fanatics YouTube channel. But for now, 3 hours, 20 minutes in the books. 10,000 of you stopped by across all platforms. Absolutely insane. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I look forward to spending the offseason with you as we navigate what will be one of the most important and wild Bills off seasons in a very long time. Once again, thanks so much for tuning in. Much love as always. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Talk soon, and go Bills.